The earliest events in the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline predate the animatronics by decades, involving a tragic family backstory that fans often overlook. Long before the haunted mascots, before the missing children, before the pizzerias became synonymous with horror, there was a man named William Afton, and the seeds of everything that would follow were planted not in a restaurant, but in the quiet, unassuming tragedy of a broken home. This is not simply the story of a video game franchise that terrified millions and spawned countless theories. This is the chronicle of a mythology that spans 7 decades, weaving together child murders, corporate cover ups, supernatural possession, and a father's descent into obsession so complete that it would shatter the boundary between life and death itself. What began as a small family diner in the early 1980s metastasized into a multi generational nightmare where the sins of the past refuse to stay buried, where innocence is stolen and trapped inside metal shells, and where every attempt to end the cycle only feeds it. The complete story of Five Nights at Freddy's is not just a tale of jump scares and creepy animatronics. It is a saga of guilt and vengeance, of souls bound to machinery, of a man who became a monster, and the countless lives destroyed in his wake. To understand any of it, to grasp how a simple indie horror game became a labyrinthine epic that has consumed the imaginations of millions, we have to go back to the very beginning, to a time before Freddy Fazbear ever sang his first song, to the origins of the Afton family and the darkness that William Afton would unleash upon the world. The story begins not with animatronics, but with people, with a family that on the surface might have seemed ordinary. William Afton, a man of ambition and intellect, possessed a brilliant mind for engineering and robotics, skills that would eventually revolutionize the entertainment industry, and, in the shadows, serve far more sinister purposes. Alongside his business partner, Henry Emily, a man whose own genius matched Williams, but whose heart remained tragically pure, Afton would lay the groundwork for what would become the Fazbear Entertainment empire. But before the empire, before the fame and the fortune, there were the Afton children, Michael, the eldest, burdened even in youth with a cruel streak that mirrored his father's hidden nature, Elizabeth, the daughter whose fascination with her father's creations would prove fatal, and the youngest son, a boy whose name has been lost to time and tragedy, known to fans only as the crying child, a fragile soul tormented by fears that would, in the end, be entirely justified. The Afton household was not a happy one. William's obsessions, whatever their true nature, created a cold distance, and the children suffered for it in ways both visible and hidden. Michael, whether out of malice or a desperate bid for his father's attention, bullied his younger brother relentlessly, donning masks to terrorize the boy, exploiting his fear of the animatronics that their father helped create. The crying child's terror was no mere childhood phase. He had seen something, or perhaps sensed something, about the animatronics that others had not yet grasped. His nightmares were populated by twisted versions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, monstrosities that seemed to know his fear intimately. And in 1983, at a birthday party held at Fredbear's family diner, the small establishment that William Afton and Henry Emily had opened together, Michael's bullying reached its horrific crescendo. In what he likely intended as a cruel prank, Michael and his friends lifted the crying child toward the stage, toward the animatronic bear Fredbear, whose spring lock-laden jaws were designed to entertain, not to harm. But the boy's tears, his screams, his thrashing, all of it culminated in a moment of unthinkable horror. Fredbear's jaws clamped down on the child's head, the spring locks failing, the machinery crushing bone and flesh. The bite was not fatal immediately, but the damage was irreversible. The crying child lingered in a hospital, his father at his bedside, whispering apologies that could never undo what had been done. The boy's death, often referred to as the Bite of '83, shattered what remained of the Afton family and set William on a path from which there would be no return. Some believe that it was this loss, this unbearable guilt and grief, that drove William Afton to seek answers in the impossible, to explore the boundaries between life and death, to discover if a soul could be preserved, if death could be cheated. Others argue that the darkness was always in him, and the tragedy merely gave him an excuse to indulge it. Regardless, the man who emerged from his son's death was no longer simply an inventor. He was a man obsessed, and Henry Emily, meanwhile, was also touched by tragedy. His own daughter, Charlotte, known as Charlie, became the first victim of William Afton's transformation into a killer. Outside Fredbear's family diner, locked out during a rainstorm while a party raged inside, Charlie was alone and vulnerable. William, wearing a costume or perhaps simply seizing an opportunity, murdered the little girl in the alley. Her death was quick, brutal, and it should have been the end. But Henry, in his own grief and brilliance, had been working on something revolutionary: the puppet, an animatronic designed to protect, to watch over children. The puppet found Charlie's body, and in a moment that defies rational explanation, something happened. Charlie's soul, her essence, her grief and confusion became bound to the puppet. She was the first, the original haunting, the beginning of a phenomenon that William Afton would soon exploit with calculated cruelty. With Fredbear's family diner tainted by tragedy, the partnership between Afton and Emily should have ended. But the demand for animatronic entertainment was too great, the potential for profit too enticing. They pressed forward, opening a new location under a new name: Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The original cast of animatronics, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, became the stars, and children flocked to the restaurant, drawn by the music, the games, the pizza, and the promise of a magical experience. But in 1985, that promise was shattered by an event that would become the dark heart of the entire Five Nights at Freddy's saga. Our story begins not with terror or tragedy, but with ambition and friendship in the early 1960s. In the small town of Hurricane, Utah, two young men crossed paths in a way that would forever alter the landscape of family entertainment and ultimately claim dozens of innocent lives. William Afton and Henry Emily met during this period, likely through local engineering circles or technical trade shows that were becoming increasingly popular as America entered an age of automation and technological optimism. Both men shared a fascination with robotics, a field still in its infancy, and both harbored dreams of bringing mechanical creations to life in ways that would captivate audiences. Where Henry saw the potential for wholesome family entertainment and the joy of creating characters that could make children smile, William saw something deeper, something more obsessive. He saw the possibility of machines that could truly mimic life itself. The two men quickly formed a partnership that seemed on the surface perfectly complementary. Henry brought artistic vision and a genuine warmth to their collaboration. He sketched characters with personality, designed stages that felt inviting, and thought constantly about how to create experiences that families would cherish. William, meanwhile, provided the technical expertise that could turn Henry's sketches into functioning reality. He understood servo motors, pneumatic systems, and the emerging field of primitive computer programming that could coordinate complex movements. Together, they co-founded a small engineering workshop in Hurricane, a modest space where they could experiment with animatronic prototypes away from the scrutiny of larger corporations or investors who might not understand their vision. This workshop became their laboratory, filled with metal skeletons, fabric coverings, and the constant sound of welding torches and mechanical testing. During the mid-1960s, as their business partnership solidified, William Afton's personal life also took shape. He married a woman whose name has been frustratingly lost to history, never mentioned in any of the games or official materials, a ghost in her own right even before the supernatural elements of this story truly begin. What we do know is that she became Mrs. Afton and that she would bear William 3 children over the coming years. The Afton household, at least in these early days, likely appeared normal to outside observers. William was a businessman, an entrepreneur, a man building something with his own hands. He had a wife, a growing family, and a promising future. But even then, those closest to him might have noticed something slightly off, a coldness in his eyes, an intensity that went beyond normal professional dedication, a tendency to disappear into his workshop for days at a time, emerging with grease stained hands and ideas that pushed the boundaries of what animatronics should be capable of doing. Henry Emily's family life developed along a parallel track, though with notably more warmth. His daughter, Charlotte Emily, was born during this period, and she became the light of Henry's life. Charlie, as she was known, embodied everything Henry hoped to create through his animatronic characters. She was curious, joyful, and possessed a natural kindness that drew people to her. The Emily and Afton families grew close during these years, bound together by the business partnership and by proximity. Their children would grow up together, playing in the workshop while their fathers worked, surrounded by mechanical parts and half-finished animatronic endoskeletons. Charlotte became a beloved figure to both families, a child who seemed to represent the innocence and joy that Henry wanted Fredbear's creations to celebrate. William and his wife's first son, Michael Afton, was born during this period, establishing the eldest of the Afton children. Michael would grow up in the shadow of his father's work, watching William disappear into increasingly obsessive projects, observing the way animatronics seemed to matter more to his father than people did. Later, the Afton family would expand further with the birth of Elizabeth Afton, a daughter with blonde hair who would develop her own fascination with her father's creations, though for very different reasons than William's clinical obsession. The youngest Afton child, a boy whose name we never learn and who becomes known only as the crying child or the bite victim in fan communities, would complete the family. This unnamed son, fragile and fearful, seemed to sense something wrong with the animatronics from an early age, a prescient terror that others dismissed as childhood anxiety. By the late 1960s, Afton and Henry felt ready to move beyond prototypes and experiments. They officially established Fredbear's Family Diner, a restaurant that would combine dining with live entertainment provided by their animatronic creations. The diner represented a bold gamble in an era when animatronic entertainment was still largely confined to Disneyland and World's Fair exhibitions. They chose 2 characters as their flagship attractions: Fredbear, a golden bear with a top hat and bow tie, who served. These weren't the crude, limited motion figures you might find at other establishments of the era. Afton and Henry had developed something more sophisticated, animatronics that could walk, gesture, and interact with audiences in ways that seemed almost magical to the children of Hurricane, Utah. The diner gained local popularity with surprising speed. Families flocked to see the mechanical performers, children celebrated birthdays in the party rooms, and parents appreciated the novelty of entertainment that didn't require constant supervision. Fredbear and Spring Bonnie became local celebrities in their own right, characters that children recognized and loved. The diner's success validated everything Afton and Henry had worked toward, proving that their vision of animatronic entertainment could not only function, but thrive. Revenue began flowing in, allowing them to refine their creations and plan for expansion. For Henry, this success meant he was bringing joy to families, creating memories that would last lifetimes. For William, it meant something else entirely. As the diner established itself, William Afton began experimenting with advanced animatronic technology that went far beyond what was necessary for simple entertainment. He developed early voice mimicry systems, mechanisms that could record and play back human speech patterns with unsettling accuracy. He worked on mobility systems that would allow animatronics to navigate spaces independently without the rails or fixed stages that most animated figures relied upon. These weren't improvements designed to enhance the customer experience. They were explorations of something deeper, a fascination with creating machines that could blur the line between mechanical and living. Afton spent countless hours in the workshop after the diner closed, testing systems, pushing boundaries, and pursuing ideas that had no clear business justification. Henry, meanwhile, focused on the diner's family friendly image and on refining the entertainment experience in more conventional ways. He designed new stage shows, created seasonal performances, and thought constantly about how to make Fredbear's a place where families felt welcome and safe. He noticed William's increasingly experimental work, but initially dismissed it as his partner's way of staying engaged with the technical side of their business. Henry was an artist and a dreamer, not a psychologist, and he failed to recognize the obsessive quality that was beginning to consume William Afton. Where Henry saw robotics as a means to an end, a tool for creating joy, William had begun to see animatronics as an end in themselves, as vessels for something he was only beginning to articulate, even to himself. The philosophical divide between the two partners grew wider as the diner's success continued. William pushed for more experimental and potentially unethical projects, ideas that made Henry uncomfortable even if he couldn't quite articulate why. Afton wanted to explore what he called animatronic sentience, the possibility of creating machines that could learn, adapt, and perhaps even think. He spoke about advanced AI systems decades before such technology would become feasible, about creating animatronics that could form memories and recognize individual guests. Some of his proposals involved testing that would put children in close proximity to experimental animatronics, scenarios that Henry found unacceptable. Tensions arose between the two men, quiet at first, but growing more pronounced as William's obsessions deepened and Henry's concerns mounted. But the spring lock technology that made Fredbear and Spring Bonnie so revolutionary came with a terrible price. During internal testing sessions, away from the public eye, the first documented spring lock failures began to occur. The mechanism's design, while ingenious, was fundamentally unstable. Moisture, sudden movements, or even breathing too heavily could trigger the locks to release, causing the compressed animatronic components to snap back into their original positions with catastrophic force. When this happened while someone was wearing the suit, the results were horrifying. Metal beams, wires, and crossbeams would pierce through flesh and bone in an instant. The test incidents left employees with broken ribs, punctured organs, and in one particularly severe case, permanent spinal damage. The victim of that incident would walk with a cane for the rest of his life, a constant reminder of the technology's dangers. William Afton and Henry Emily faced a critical decision. They could halt production or redesign the suits and delay their business expansion by years, or they could bury the incidents and move forward. Afton argued persuasively that the failures were user error, not design flaws. He insisted that with proper training protocols, the suits would be perfectly safe. Henry, ever the optimist and trusting his partner's technical expertise, agreed to keep the incidents quiet. They paid the injured employees generously, had them sign non-disclosure agreements, and implemented what they called enhanced safety procedures. In reality, these procedures amounted to little more than warning employees to be careful and avoid moisture near the suits. The fundamental design remained unchanged. This decision to prioritize profit and progress over safety would establish a pattern that would define the entire Freddy Fazbear legacy, a pattern of covering up the darkness beneath the cheerful exterior. As the business grew and the springlock incidents mounted, William Afton began to change. He started spending less and less time at home with his family, instead, retreating to a private workshop he had constructed in the basement of his house. His wife would later describe hearing strange mechanical sounds emanating from below at all hours of the night, the whirring of motors, the hiss of pneumatic systems, and occasionally sounds she could not identify, sounds that made her deeply uncomfortable. Afton had become obsessed, not just with creating entertaining animatronics, but with pushing the boundaries of what the technology could achieve. His workshop became his sanctuary, a place where he could have became fascinated by her father's work during this period. She would sit at the top of the basement stairs, listening to the sounds below, imagining what wonders her father must be creating. On the rare occasions when Afton emerged from his workshop in a good mood, Elizabeth would bombard him with questions about the robots, about how they worked, about what he was building. Afton, despite his growing emotional distance from his family, seemed to have a soft spot for Elizabeth. He would sometimes describe his projects to her in vague terms, speaking of animatronics that could do amazing things, that could be more than just entertainment. He told her about a special project, a ballerina animatronic he was designing with her in mind. He called it Circus Baby. Elizabeth became fixated on this creation, asking about it constantly, begging to see it. Afton would always refuse, telling her it was not ready yet, that she would have to wait. But he encouraged her interest, perhaps seeing in her a kindred spirit, someone who might understand his vision in a way others could not. Henry Emily, meanwhile, had begun to notice troubling changes in his partner. During their working sessions, Henry would occasionally glimpse sketches and schematics in Afton's notebooks that seemed to have nothing to do with entertainment robotics. Designs for containment chambers, injection mechanisms, and what appeared to be some kind of remnant collection system, though Henry did not understand what remnant meant in this context. When Henry asked about these designs, Afton would quickly close the notebook or change the subject. Their conversations, once filled with shared excitement and creative collaboration, became tense and guarded. Henry's natural curiosity eventually led him to investigate further. One evening, after Afton had left the workshop they shared at Fredbear's Diner, Henry went through his partner's files. What he found disturbed him deeply. Pages of notes about consciousness, about the persistence of the soul after death, about using animatronic technology as a vessel for something Afton called the remnant of life. There were references to experiments, though Henry could not determine whether these were theoretical or if Afton had actually conducted them. Henry confronted Afton the next day, bringing the notes and demanding an explanation. The confrontation did not go well. Afton, rather than showing shame or offering reassurance, became defensive and angry. He accused Henry of spying on him, of not trusting him, of lacking the vision to understand what they could truly achieve with their technology. Afton argued that they were on the verge of something revolutionary, something that would make their entertainment business seem trivial by comparison. He spoke of conquering death itself, of proving that consciousness could persist beyond the body, that the soul was not some abstract religious concept, but a tangible thing that could be captured, preserved, and studied. Henry was horrified. He told Afton that he had gone too far, that whatever experiments he was conducting needed to stop immediately. Afton refused. He told Henry that he could continue with the simple entertainment robots if he wished, but that Afton's own research would continue. The partnership between the two men, once built on friendship and shared dreams, became strained and purely transactional. They would continue to work together on Fredbear's Diner and the planned expansion into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but the trust between them had been shattered. The tension in Afton's professional life was mirrored by growing problems at home. His youngest son, the boy who would later be known as the crying child, had developed an intense and debilitating fear of the animatronics. This fear had a specific origin. The boy had been present at Fredbear's Diner during one of the Springlock incidents. He had not seen the moment of failure itself, but he had seen the aftermath. The blood, the panic, the way the employees had rushed the injured person away while trying to keep the few customers present from understanding what had happened. The boy had seen his father's face during the incident, and what disturbed him most was that his father had not looked horrified or concerned. His father had looked fascinated, clinically interested in what had occurred. From that moment on, the child associated the animatronics with danger and death. He would have nightmares about them, wake up screaming, and refuse to go near Fredbear's Diner. His fear became so severe that he would cry at the mere mention of the restaurant or the characters. His older brother, Michael, found this fear pathetic and began to torment him for it, wearing masks and jumping out to scare him, holding animatronic toys in his face, calling him a baby. William Afton showed little patience for his youngest son's fear, viewing it as weakness, as an embarrassment to the family business. Afton's wife, whose name has been lost to time or perhaps deliberately obscured in the historical record, grew increasingly alarmed by her husband's behavior and its effect on their children. She noticed his absence, his obsession, the way he looked at their children sometimes as if they were subjects of study rather than people he loved. She tried to talk to him about it, to pull him back from whatever edge he was approaching, but Afton would not listen. He told her she could not possibly understand his work, that she should focus on managing the household and leave the important matters to him. The dismissiveness, the contempt in his voice when he spoke to her, marked a dramatic shift from the man she had married. She began to suspect that something more sinister was happening in that basement workshop, though she could not have imagined the true scope of her husband's activities. Henry Emily, despite the confrontation and the deterioration of their partnership, made one final attempt to help his friend. He reached out to Afton personally, inviting him to dinner, trying to reconnect on a human level rather than as business partners. Henry offered support, suggested that Afton might be working too hard, that perhaps he should take time off, spend more time with his family, consider speaking to someone about the dark thoughts that seemed to be consuming him. Afton's response was cold and final. He told Henry that he did not need help, that Henry's concern was unwelcome and patronizing, and that Henry should stay out of his personal affairs. After that conversation, their relationship became purely professional, limited to necessary discussions about the business. They were no longer friends, merely partners bound together by contracts and shared financial interests. During this same period, the late 1970s, disturbing reports began to emerge from the area surrounding Fredbear's family diner. Children went missing, not many, not enough to cause widespread panic, but enough to trouble local law enforcement. 2 children disappeared from neighborhoods near the diner over the course of 18 months. The cases seemed unrelated at first, different circumstances, different times of day, no obvious connection except geographic proximity. No evidence pointed to William Afton or to Fredbear's Diner specifically. No witnesses placed the children at the restaurant before their disappearances. The cases went cold, filed away as tragic unsolved mysteries. But looking back with the knowledge of what would come later, these disappearances take on a sinister significance. They suggest that William Afton's experiments, his obsession with life after death, and the preservation of consciousness had already moved beyond the theoretical stage. They suggest that he had already begun to test his theories, and that he had discovered children made the best subjects for his horrific research. By the early 1980s, William Afton and Henry Emily had transformed their shared passion for animatronic entertainment into a concrete business plan. Around 1983, the 2 men officially opened Fredbear's Family Diner, marking their first collaborative venture into the restaurant industry and establishing what would become the foundation for an entire empire of family entertainment venues. This wasn't simply a restaurant with mechanical performers. It represented Henry's engineering genius combined with William's business acumen, a partnership that seemed destined for success. The diner itself occupied a modest building in Hurricane, Utah, designed to appeal to families seeking affordable dining paired with live entertainment. The concept was straightforward but innovative for its time. Children could celebrate birthdays, families could enjoy meals together, and everyone would be captivated by the technological marvels performing on stage. The stars of Fredbear's Family Diner were two animatronic characters that would become iconic within the franchise's mythology. Fredbear, a large golden bear with a purple top hat and bow tie, served as the primary mascot and main attraction. His counterpart, Spring Bonnie, was a golden rabbit of similar design, slightly more slender but equally imposing in stature. Both characters were rendered in a distinctive yellow gold color that caught the eye under stage lights. But these weren't ordinary animatronics. Henry Emily had engineered them as springlock suits, a revolutionary hybrid technology that allowed the costumes to function in two distinct modes. In animatronic mode, the suits operated autonomously, powered by internal mechanisms that controlled their movements, gestures, and programmed performances. However, by carefully winding back the animatronic components using a special hand crank, an employee could compress the mechanical parts against the inside of the suit, creating enough space for a human performer to climb inside and wear the costume. This dual functionality meant the characters could perform automated shows during peak hours, then be worn by staff members for more intimate interactions with children during slower periods or special events. The spring lock mechanism itself was an intricate system of interlocking springs and latches that held the animatronic endoskeleton components in their compressed position when the suit was in wearable mode. The technology was brilliant in concept, but carried inherent dangers that would only become apparent over time. The springs were highly sensitive to moisture, sudden impacts, and even breathing too heavily while inside the suit. Any failure of the spring lock system would cause the animatronic parts to snap back into their original positions with tremendous force, and if someone happened to be wearing the suit at that moment, the consequences would be catastrophic. Despite these risks, the spring lock suits represented cutting edge entertainment technology, and Henry took considerable pride in their design and implementation. The division of labor between the two founders reflected their individual strengths and interests. Henry Emily immersed himself in the technical and creative dimensions of the business. He refined the animatronics' movements to appear more lifelike, programmed their performance routines, composed songs for them to sing, and continuously tinkered with improvements to their mechanical systems. Henry possessed an artist's sensibility combined with an engineer's precision, and he genuinely believed in creating magical experiences for children. William Afton, by contrast, focused on business operations, marketing strategies, financial management, and expansion planning. He handled supplier relationships, staffing decisions, advertising campaigns, and customer relations. On the surface, William appeared to be the charismatic businessman, always ready with a smile for investors or a reassuring word for concerned parents. Yet beneath this polished exterior existed something darker, a fascination with the animatronics that extended beyond their commercial potential. As Fredbear's Family Diner gained popularity in the local community, it became a regular destination for birthday parties and family outings. Parents appreciated the affordable menu and the fact that their children could be entertained for hours by the animatronic performances. The diner's success seemed to validate the partnership between Henry and William, suggesting a bright future for potential expansion. However, not everyone found the animatronics charming or delightful. William Afton's youngest son, who would later be referred to in the community as the crying child due to his perpetual state of distress, developed an intense and debilitating fear of the mechanical performers. The exact origin of this phobia remains somewhat unclear, but evidence suggests the child witnessed something disturbing involving the animatronics, perhaps seeing them malfunction observing strange behavior in their movements, or even catching a glimpse of his father engaged in unsettling experiments with the machines after hours. The crying child's fear manifested as a constant, overwhelming anxiety whenever he was brought to the diner, or even when the animatronics were mentioned. He would break into tears, hyperventilate, and desperately try to escape or hide. His terror was genuine and profound, the kind of visceral fear that couldn't be reasoned away or dismissed as simple childhood imagination. Unfortunately, this visible weakness made him a target for cruelty. His older brother, Michael Afton, was a teenager going through his own troubled phase, likely affected by the dysfunction within the Afton household and his father's emotional distance. Michael and his group of friends, who often wore masks resembling the animatronic characters from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, another location that would soon enter the story, found perverse entertainment in tormenting the younger boy. They would chase him while wearing their masks and corner him in rooms with animatronic posters, physically drag him toward Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, and force him to confront the very things that terrified him most. These incidents of bullying weren't isolated pranks, but rather formed a pattern of sustained psychological torture. Michael seemed to take particular pleasure in his brother's distress, perhaps channeling his own pain and confusion into cruelty toward someone more vulnerable. The friends who participated in this behavior enabled and encouraged Michael's worst impulses, creating a toxic dynamic that would ultimately lead to tragedy. The crying child had no safe refuge. At home, his father was emotionally absent or actively involved in work that somehow connected to the source of his fears. At the diner, which the family visited frequently due to William's ownership, he was surrounded by the towering figures of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, and even when he tried to hide or avoid the animatronics, his brother would hunt him down and drag him back into proximity with them. Meanwhile, William Afton's interest in the animatronics was evolving beyond their intended purpose as entertainment devices. He began conducting experiments with the technology, exploring possibilities that Henry likely never imagined or would have approved of. William's technical knowledge was less sophisticated than Henry's, but his curiosity drove him to tinker with the machines, test their capabilities, and investigate aspects of their design that had nothing to do with making children smile. The exact nature of these early experiments remains obscure, but they suggest William was already contemplating darker applications for animatronic technology, perhaps related to his emerging obsession with mortality, consciousness, and the boundaries between life and death. The crying child's psychological state deteriorated as the torment continued. His fear invaded his sleep, manifesting as recurring nightmares that twisted the animatronics into monstrous versions of themselves. In these dreams, Fredbear and the other characters appeared grotesquely distorted, with enormous teeth, shadowy forms, and malevolent intent. The nightmare animatronics that haunted his sleeping hours reflected the depth of his trauma, transforming what others saw as friendly entertainment into existential threats. He would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, unable to distinguish the nightmare from reality. These dreams would later be depicted in the gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's 4, where players experience the terror from the crying child's perspective, defending against nightmare versions of the animatronics that invade a child's bedroom. The situation reached its horrific climax during the crying child's birthday party, an event that William Afton insisted on hosting at Fredbear's family diner, despite his son's obvious and well-documented fear. The choice of venue was either a profound act of parental insensitivity or a deliberate decision whose motivations remain troublingly unclear. Michael and his friends saw the birthday party as an opportunity for their most elaborate prank yet. As the celebration proceeded and the crying child tried desperately to avoid the animatronics, Michael and his masked friends cornered the terrified boy. Despite his screaming, crying, and physical resistance, they lifted him off the ground and carried him toward the stage where Fredbear was performing. The younger child fought with everything he had, but he was overpowered by the older boys, who found his terror amusing rather than concerning. They hoisted him higher, bringing his head level with Fredbear's face, and in a moment of catastrophic misjudgment, they shoved his head directly into the animatronic's mouth. What happened next would become one of the most pivotal and tragic moments in the entire Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. The force of the child's head being thrust into Fredbear's jaw, combined with possible moisture from the child's tears or saliva, or perhaps simply the mechanical stress of the action, caused the spring lock mechanisms inside Fredbear's head to fail. The ambulance rushes through the streets of Hurricane, Utah, sirens wailing as paramedics work frantically over the small broken body of the crying child. His skull has been catastrophically damaged by the bite force of Fredbear's powerful animatronic jaws, and despite the best efforts of emergency medical personnel, the prognosis is grim from the moment they load him into the vehicle. At the hospital, doctors perform emergency surgery to relieve the pressure on his brain and stabilize his vitals, but the trauma is simply too severe. The child's frontal lobe has been irreparably crushed, and internal bleeding continues despite all interventions. For several days, he clings to life in the intensive care unit, surrounded by beeping monitors and the sterile smell of antiseptic. His father, William Afton, maintains a vigil at his bedside, though witnesses later recall his expression as strangely detached, almost clinical, as if he were observing a failed experiment rather than mourning his dying son. Henry Emily visits frequently, his face drawn with guilt and horror at what his creation has done. The child never regains consciousness. On the monitor beside his bed, a flatline eventually screams its terrible finality, and the crying child becomes the first known death directly tied to the animatronics that William and Henry created. The date of his passing is never officially confirmed by Fazbear Entertainment, but local hospital records place it within a week of the birthday party incident, making him a grim milestone in what will become a long history of tragedy surrounding these mechanical entertainers. In the immediate aftermath, Fredbear's Family Diner's management, under pressure from both William Afton and the parent company's legal team, moves swiftly to contain the damage. The official story released to local media describes the incident as a tragic accident caused by unsupervised children engaging in horseplay near the animatronics, carefully omitting any mention of the actual bite or the specific circumstances that led to it. The family is offered a substantial financial settlement in exchange for their silence and agreement not to pursue legal action, a deal that William himself negotiates with cold efficiency despite having just lost his youngest son. Documents are sealed, witness statements are collected, and then buried in filing cabinets, and employees are required to sign non-disclosure agreements threatening termination and legal consequences if they speak publicly about what they witnessed. The local newspaper runs a brief story about a child's accidental death at a family restaurant, but without details or follow-up coverage, the story quickly fades from the front pages. However, the truth has a way of spreading regardless of official denials. Parents who attended the party talk to other parents. Employees whisper to friends and family members. Children who witnessed the bite have nightmares and tell their siblings what they saw. Within weeks, rumors circulate throughout Hurricane about the dangerous animatronics at Fredbear's, about a child whose head was crushed in front of a room full of screaming witnesses, about blood and mechanical failure and negligent supervision. The damage to the diner's reputation proves impossible to contain, no matter how much money the company throws at public relations. Attendance at Fredbear's Family Diner drops precipitously in the weeks following the incident. Parents who once brought their children weekly for pizza and entertainment now avoid the location entirely, crossing the street rather than walking past its colorful facade. Birthday party reservations are canceled en masse with apologetic phone calls citing vague concerns about safety or sudden changes in plans. The few families who do visit find the atmosphere changed, the once joyful space now haunted by whispers and sidelong glances at the animatronics. Employees notice that children no longer approach Fredbear and Spring Bonnie with excitement, instead clinging to their parents' legs and refusing to get close to the stage. The financial impact is immediate and devastating. Within 2 months of the bite of 83, Fredbear's Family Diner announces its permanent closure, citing economic factors and the need to focus resources on other ventures. The official press release makes no mention of the incident, but everyone in Hurricane understands the real reason. The diner that started it all, the original location where William Afton and Henry Emily first brought their vision of animatronic entertainment to life, shuts its doors forever. The colorful banners come down, the arcade machines are unplugged, and the smell of pizza gradually fades from the building that will soon be emptied and abandoned. The closure marks a turning point in the partnership between William Afton and Henry Emily. Henry, who poured his heart and soul into creating animatronics that would bring joy to children, is absolutely devastated by the role his invention played in a child's death. He becomes withdrawn and depressed, questioning everything about the project that once filled him with such pride and purpose. Friends and colleagues notice that he stops talking about future plans, stops sketching new designs, stops displaying the enthusiasm that once defined his approach to engineering. He attends the crying child's funeral, a small private ceremony that William insists on keeping quiet, and witnesses the small coffin being lowered into the ground with tears streaming down his face. The guilt weighs on him like a physical burden, bending his shoulders and aging him seemingly overnight. William, by contrast, becomes increasingly secretive and withdrawn in a different way. Rather than being crushed by grief, he seems to internalize it, channeling his emotions into an obsessive focus on his work. He spends long hours alone in his private workshop, refusing to discuss his feelings or plans with Henry or anyone else. The two men, once close friends and collaborators, begin to drift apart as they process the tragedy in fundamentally incompatible ways. Their business meetings become tense and brief, focused purely on logistics rather than the creative partnership that once defined their relationship. Henry suggests shutting down all animatronic operations permanently, but William refuses, insisting that the technology itself is not at fault and that proper safety measures can prevent future incidents. This fundamental disagreement creates a rift between them that will never fully heal. The physical assets of Fredbear's Family Diner are handled with surprising care despite the circumstances. The Fredbear and Spring Bonnie animatronics, the original performers that started the entire franchise, are carefully removed from the stage and transported to a secure storage facility. William personally oversees this process, insisting that the machines be preserved rather than destroyed, arguing that they represent valuable intellectual property and significant financial investment. The Springlock suits, despite their role in the tragedy, are meticulously cleaned, serviced, and stored in climate-controlled conditions. Other equipment, including tables, chairs, arcade machines, and kitchen appliances, are either sold off to recoup some of the financial losses or moved to warehouse space for potential future use. The building itself sits empty for several months before being leased to an unrelated business, its history as the birthplace of Fazbear Entertainment gradually fading from public memory. However, William maintains access to the stored animatronics and continues to study them, particularly the spring lock mechanisms that allow the suits to function both as autonomous animatronics and as wearable costumes. This technology fascinates him on a level that goes beyond mere engineering interest, though his true motivations remain opaque even to those closest to him. The Afton family, already strained by dysfunction and William's emotional distance, fractures completely in the wake of the crying child's death. Michael Afton, The older brother, whose cruel prank directly caused the fatal injury, is consumed by guilt that will haunt him for the rest of his life. He becomes withdrawn and isolated, avoiding his former friends and spending hours alone in his room. His relationship with his father deteriorates further, with William seemingly unable or unwilling to offer comfort or forgiveness. Some accounts suggest that William actually blames Michael for the death, though he never says so explicitly, instead communicating his disappointment through cold silence and emotional absence. Mrs. Afton, the children's mother whose presence in the story remains frustratingly vague in the available records, appears to separate from William sometime around this period, though the exact circumstances are unclear. What is certain is that the family unit that once existed, however imperfect, is permanently destroyed by the events of 1983. Michael is left to carry the burden of his guilt alone, a burden that will eventually drive him to seek redemption through increasingly dangerous means in the years to come. William Afton's response to his son's death proves to be the most consequential aspect of the entire tragedy. Rather than being broken by grief in any conventional sense, William becomes obsessed with understanding and conquering death itself. His work in the private workshop intensifies, with neighbors reporting lights burning late into the night and strange sounds emanating from the building. He begins researching topics far removed from simple robotics and entertainment, delving into fringe theories about consciousness, soul energy, and the possibility of preserving human essence beyond physical death. This marks the beginning of his experiments with what will later be known as remnant, a mysterious substance related to human souls and their connection to physical objects, particularly metal. William becomes convinced that death is not an ending, but a transition, and that with the right technology and understanding, it can be reversed or circumvented entirely. His notebooks from this period, later discovered by investigators, contain increasingly disturbing sketches and theories, mixing legitimate engineering diagrams with pseudoscientific speculation about supernatural phenomena. The loss of his son does not humanize William Afton or lead him toward redemption. Instead, it pushes him further down a dark path that will eventually transform him into something far worse than a neglectful father or careless businessman. The spring Bonnie suit, the yellow rabbit costume that William often wore while performing at Fredbear's, is preserved with particular care. Unlike the Fredbear suit that actually caused the fatal bite, Spring Bonnie holds a special significance for William. He continues to maintain and modify it, treating it almost like a precious artifact rather than a simple piece of equipment. This suit will eventually become central to William's identity, the costume he wears when committing his most heinous acts, and ultimately the prison that transforms him into Springtrap, the horrifying fusion of man and machine that haunts the franchise's later chapters. But in 1983, it is simply a yellow rabbit suit sitting in storage, waiting for its owner to find a new use for it. The legacy of Fredbear's Family Diner extends far beyond its brief operational life. When Fazbear Entertainment eventually opens new locations, the lessons of the Bite of 83 influence every aspect of their design and operation. Animatronics are placed behind barriers or on elevated stages to prevent direct contact with children. Springlock suits are officially retired from active use in most locations, deemed too dangerous for continued operation. Safety protocols are written and rewritten, creating thick binders of policies that employees are required to memorize. Yet despite these measures, the fundamental problems remain unaddressed. The company's instinct to cover up rather than confront tragedy, to prioritize profit over safety, to silence victims rather than accept responsibility, all of these patterns are established at Fredbear's and will repeat themselves throughout the franchise's dark history. The Bite of 83 becomes a buried secret, a footnote that Fazbear Entertainment desperately wants the world to forget. But secrets have a way of resurfacing, especially when they are built on the grave of an innocent child. The tragedy shapes everything that follows, creating ripples that spread outward through time, touching every subsequent location, every new animatronic, every future victim. The crying child's death is not just the first tragedy in the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, it is the original sin that sets everything else in motion. The moment when William Afton's obsessions crystallize into something truly dangerous, the point where Henry Emily's dreams curdle into nightmares. Fredbear's Family Diner closes its doors in 1983, but its legacy of horror is only just beginning. By the mid 1980s, the modest success of Fredbear's Family Diner had caught the attention of investors and entrepreneurs looking to capitalize on the growing market for family entertainment venues. Henry Emily, ever the visionary, saw an opportunity to expand his concept beyond the single location model. He needed a business partner, someone who could help manage the financial and operational complexities of a larger venture. That partner would be William Afton, a man whose technical skills and business acumen seemed to complement Henry's creative genius perfectly. Together, in 1983, they formally established Fazbear Entertainment as a corporate entity, setting the stage for what would become a franchise empire. Their first major project under this new partnership would open its doors around 1985, a larger, more ambitious location simply called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. This new restaurant represented a significant evolution from the diner. Where Fredbear's had featured just two main characters, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza would showcase an entire cast of animatronic performers. The star of the show was Freddy Fazbear himself, a brown bear with a top hat and bow tie, who served as the lead vocalist and face of the franchise. Alongside him stood Bonnie, a purple rabbit with a red bow tie, who played guitar. Chica, a yellow chicken with a bib reading Let's Eat, provided backup vocals and represented the restaurant's pizza-focused menu. Finally, there was Foxy, a red pirate fox with an eye patch and hook hand, who performed on his own stage in a section called Pirate Cove. These four characters, collectively known as the original animatronics, would become the foundation of the Freddy Fazbear brand for years to come. The technology behind these animatronics was considerably more advanced than the spring lock-based designs of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. Henry had developed a new type of endoskeleton, the internal metal skeleton that gave the animatronics their structure and movement capability. These endoskeletons were equipped with servos, hydraulics, and early computer systems that allowed for sophisticated choreographed performances. More impressively, they featured a limited free-roaming mode, a cutting-edge innovation that allowed the animatronics to walk around the restaurant during operating hours, interacting with children, and posing for photographs. This feature, while technologically remarkable, required complex programming to ensure the robots could navigate the space without colliding with furniture or guests. The animatronics were fitted with basic facial recognition software, intended to help them identify and engage with children while avoiding adults who might not appreciate an 8-foot robot approaching them unexpectedly. William Afton's role in the partnership extended beyond mere business management. He contributed his own engineering expertise, though his approach differed markedly from Henry's. Where Henry designed with joy and wonder in mind, William seemed increasingly preoccupied with more esoteric concerns. He had become fascinated, perhaps even obsessed, with concepts that straddled the line between science and philosophy. Chief among these was the idea of remnant, a term he used to describe a theoretical substance or property related to human consciousness and memory. Afton believed that emotional energy, particularly the intense emotions associated with trauma or death, could somehow be captured, stored, and even transferred. He theorized that this remnant might hold the key to immortality, to preserving human consciousness beyond the death of the body. These experiments were conducted in secret, hidden from Henry and the other employees, carried out in the back rooms and maintenance areas of the restaurants after hours. The source of Afton's obsession remains a subject of speculation, but those who knew both men noted a growing tension in their relationship. William seemed envious of Henry, resentful of his partner's seemingly perfect family life. Henry had a loving wife, a bright daughter named Charlotte, and the respect of everyone who worked with him. William, by contrast, had a troubled home life. His own family was fracturing. His marriage was strained, and his relationship with his children, Michael, Elizabeth, and the youngest son, often called the crying child, was distant at best and abusive at worst. This personal unhappiness appeared to curdle into something darker, a bitterness that would eventually manifest in unspeakable ways. Despite the advanced endoskeleton technology, William insisted on incorporating the older spring lock designs into the new location. He created two spring lock suits, specifically for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, though they were officially designated for the original diner location as well. These were Spring Bonnie, a yellow rabbit suit, and Fredbear, the yellow bear that had been the mascot of the diner. The spring lock mechanism allowed these suits to function in two modes. In animatronic mode, the internal springs would expand, deploying the robotic endoskeleton components that allowed the suit to move and perform on its own. In suit mode, an employee would use a special hand crank to wind back and compress these springs against the inside walls of the suit, creating a cavity large enough for a person to wear the costume. This dual functionality made the suits versatile, useful for both automated performances and situations where a human performer was needed. However, the spring lock suits came with severe safety risks that William downplayed or ignored entirely. The springs were under tremendous tension when compressed, and they could be triggered to snap back into animatronic mode by several factors, including moisture, sudden movements, or simple mechanical failure. If this happened while someone was wearing the suit, the results would be catastrophic. The metal components, the crossbeams, the gears, and the animatronic parts would deploy instantly, crushing and impaling the person inside. Employees were given minimal training on the suits and warned to avoid breathing too heavily or sweating, as moisture was a known trigger. Despite these dangers, the suits remained in use because they served William's purposes in ways that went far beyond entertainment. The first victim was a young girl named Susie. She was a regular at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a bright child who loved the animatronics, particularly Chica. Susie had recently experienced a terrible loss. Her dog, her beloved pet and constant companion, had been struck by a car and killed. She was grieving, vulnerable, emotionally raw in the way that only a child experiencing their first real encounter with death can be. William Afton noticed this vulnerability. He watched her, studied her patterns, learned about her loss through overheard conversations with her parents. Then, one day, he approached her while wearing the Spring Bonnie suit. Children trusted the animatronic characters implicitly, and the Spring Bonnie costume made William appear as a friendly, oversized cartoon rabbit rather than a strange adult man. He told Susie that her dog was still alive, that he had found it, that it was in the back room waiting for her. All she had to do was follow him. Trusting, desperate to believe that her beloved pet might somehow have survived, Susie followed Spring Bonnie into the restricted areas of the restaurant, into the back rooms where employees stored supplies, and where the security cameras had convenient blind spots. There, away from witnesses, William Afton murdered her. The method of murder is never explicitly detailed in the games, but the outcome is clear. Afton killed Susie and then hid her body inside one of the animatronics, specifically inside Chica, the character she had loved most. The animatronic shells were large enough to conceal a child's body within the endoskeleton structure, and the restaurants were filled with strong odors from pizza, grease, and cleaning chemicals that would mask the smell of decomposition, at least for a while. This first murder proved to William that his theory about Remnant might have merit, though the full implications would not become apparent immediately. More importantly, it proved that he could get away with it. Emboldened by his success, Afton continued his killing spree. He murdered 4 more children over the following days or weeks, each time using the spring Bonnie suit to gain their trust, each time luring them to the back rooms with promises or tricks tailored to their individual vulnerabilities. A boy named Gabriel was killed and hidden inside Freddy Fazbear himself. Jeremy, another young boy, was stuffed into Bonnie. Fritz, a child known for his energetic personality, was concealed within Foxy. The fifth victim, a child named Cassidy, was different from the others. As the puppet, now animated by the spirit of Charlotte Emily, continued its silent vigil over the restaurant, its attempts to protect the other children's souls grew more desperate. The animatronics, now housing the restless spirits of Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy, began exhibiting erratic behaviors beyond simple malfunctions. The puppet's influence, its gifts, as later lore would describe them, allowed the children's consciousness to merge with the machines, but this fusion came at a cost. The animatronics were never designed to contain human souls, and the resulting instability manifested in ways that could no longer be ignored. Health inspectors called in after complaints from staff and patrons noted foul odors emanating from the suits, described in reports as a sickening mix of decay and mildew. More disturbingly, mucus-like substances, later implied to be a byproduct of Remnant, the supernatural essence binding soul to machine, were observed seeping from the animatronics' joints and seams. Temporary closures were ordered for deep cleaning, but no amount of sanitization could remove what was festering inside. William Afton, ever the opportunist, seized control of the narrative. As co-founder and the public face of the company, he skillfully redirected blame away from himself, attributing the issues to faulty programming and poor maintenance. He pointed to the animatronics' older endoskeletons, claiming their outdated systems were prone to glitches, and even fabricated maintenance logs to support his claims. Behind the scenes, however, Afton was tampering with the investigation, bribing officials, and disposing of incriminating evidence. His dual role as perpetrator and damage control expert allowed him to manipulate the situation with chilling efficiency. Yet despite his efforts, the restaurant's reputation began to crumble. Whispers of the missing children spread through Hurricane, Utah, fueled by parents' grief and employees' hushed accounts of eerie occurrences. Patrons reported seeing the animatronics' eyes track them across the dining room, their movements too deliberate for machines. Some claimed the characters' faces would twitch into expressions of rage when no one was looking. The local newspaper, the Hurricane Herald, ran a now infamous piece titled Freddy's Fun or Frightening, which cited anonymous staff members describing the animatronics as haunted. The situation escalated after hours. Night guards, initially hired to deter vandalism, began reporting encounters far more sinister. The animatronics, now fully aware of their tragic circumstances, saw every adult as a potential threat, a reflection of Afton's betrayal. Guards recounted being stalked through the halls, hearing distorted laughter echoing from empty rooms, and finding the animatronics in places they shouldn't be. One guard's incident report, later leaked online, described Freddy Fazbear's head turning slowly, as if alive to watch me from the stage, even though its power was disconnected. Another claimed Bonnie had cornered him in a supply closet, its guitar raised like a weapon. These attacks weren't just random malfunctions. They were acts of vengeance, the children's spirits lashing out in confusion and pain. Amid the chaos, another tragedy unfolded, the retirement of the Springlock suits. These hybrid costumes, designed to double as both animatronics and wearable suits, had always been precarious. Afton himself had narrowly avoided a spring lock failure years prior, but now a series of simultaneous malfunctions led to multiple employee deaths. Official reports blamed humidity and improper maintenance, but internal memos hinted at sabotage. Afton, ever the puppeteer, had tampered with the suit's mechanisms, using the accidents as a cover to remove witnesses who'd grown too curious about his activities. The suits were hastily decommissioned, though Afton kept two for himself, the now infamous Spring Bonnie and Fredbear models, storing them in a back room with a warning sign that read, "Do not touch." Their removal did little to stem the restaurant's decline. By late 1985, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was beyond saving. Plummeting attendance, lawsuits from grieving families, and relentless health violations forced its closure. The final nail in the coffin was a Hurricane Herald expose linking the restaurant to the missing children, though Afton's name was conspicuously absent from the article. The animatronics, now deemed unsalvageable, were slated for destruction, but Afton had other plans. Under the guise of disposing of them responsibly, he stripped their endoskeletons and salvaged critical components, transporting them to a secret workshop. Here, he began his most twisted experiments yet, studying the remnant within the metal, seeking to harness its power. The spirits, however, refused to be silenced. Left behind in the abandoned restaurant, they lingered, their agony echoing through the empty halls. The puppet, ever watchful, remained with them, its mournful music box melody the only comfort in their shared purgatory. Unbeknownst to Afton, his crimes had not gone unnoticed. The puppet, though bound to the restaurant, had begun tracking his movements, its supernatural awareness stretching beyond physical limits. As Afton turned his attention to his next venture, Circus Baby's Pizza World, a family-friendly facade for his darker ambitions, he remained arrogantly confident in his invincibility. But the spirits and the puppet were not finished with him. The stage was set for a reckoning, one that would span decades and reshape the fate of everyone involved. The first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had fallen, but the nightmare was only beginning. Meanwhile, the town of Hurricane moved on, the tragedy fading into urban legend. The building stood empty, its boarded-up windows hiding the restless souls within. Parents warned their children to stay away, telling stories of the ghosts in the animatronics, little knowing how close to the truth they were. And as Afton's new project took shape, the remnants of his old sins festered, waiting for the moment they'd drag him back into the darkness he'd created. Following the infamous events of the first missing children incident at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1985, William Afton found himself at a crossroads. The public scrutiny and mounting suspicions surrounding the disappearances forced him to pivot his ambitions. By 1986, Afton had begun crafting a new venture, one that would allow him to continue his sinister experiments with animatronics and the enigmatic substance known as remnant. This substance, a byproduct of emotional energy trapped within physical objects, was central to Afton's obsession with immortality and control over life and death. His new project, Circus Baby's Pizza World, was conceived not as a genuine family entertainment center, but as a calculated facade for his dark pursuits. Afton's vision for Circus Baby's Pizza World was a departure from the Freddy Fazbear brand. Instead of the familiar cast of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, he designed a new line of animatronics known as the Funtime series. These included Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora, each engineered with advanced artificial intelligence and sophisticated mechanisms far beyond the capabilities of their predecessors. Unlike the animatronics at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the Funtime models were built with a chilling purpose: to lure and capture children. Afton had incorporated features such as voice mimicry, parental voice lock systems, and storage compartments within their endoskeletons, all designed to facilitate the abduction of unsuspecting victims. Circus Baby, the centerpiece of the restaurant, was particularly advanced, equipped with a claw like mechanism concealed within her torso, ready to ensnare any child who ventured too close. The restaurant itself was marketed as a vibrant, family friendly destination, complete with colorful decor, arcade games, and animatronic performances. However, beneath this cheerful exterior lay a grim reality. Circus Baby's Pizza World was never intended to be a place of joy or entertainment. It was a carefully constructed trap, a stage for Afton to further his experiments with Remnant and the harvesting of children's souls. The Funtime animatronics were not performers, they were predators, their programming designed to isolate and capture their targets with chilling efficiency. Among those drawn to the allure of Circus Baby's Pizza World was Afton's own daughter, Elizabeth. Despite her father's explicit warnings to stay away from the animatronics, Elizabeth was captivated by Circus Baby. The animatronic's vibrant design and seemingly friendly demeanor masked the danger lurking within, and Elizabeth's curiosity proved irresistible. Afton's warnings, though stern, were not enough to deter her. This fascination would soon lead to tragedy. The grand opening of Circus Baby's Pizza World was meant to be a moment of triumph for Afton, a showcase of his ingenuity and ambition. However, it quickly became a scene of horror. During the event, Elizabeth, unable to resist her curiosity, approached Circus Baby alone. Unbeknownst to her, the animatronic's programming was primed to act. Circus Baby's claw mechanism activated, capturing Elizabeth and pulling her into its internal compartment. The animatronic's advanced AI, designed to follow its directives without hesitation, executed its grim purpose. Elizabeth was killed, her young life extinguished in a moment of unimaginable cruelty. In the aftermath of this tragedy, something extraordinary occurred. Elizabeth's spirit, imbued with the raw emotional energy of her death, became bound to Circus Baby. This phenomenon, known as possession, is a recurring theme in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, where the souls of the deceased merge with animatronics, granting them a form of sentience. Elizabeth's spirit took control of Circus Baby, merging with the animatronic's AI and gaining limited influence over its actions. This fusion of human consciousness and machine intelligence created a being that was neither fully alive nor entirely artificial, a haunting echo of the child who had been lost. The disappearance of Elizabeth did not go unnoticed. Her absence, coupled with the mysterious circumstances surrounding the incident, forced Afton to take drastic measures. Circus Baby's Pizza World, which had opened with such fanfare, was abruptly shut down after only a single day of operation. The public was left with questions, but Afton was quick to fabricate a story to deflect suspicion. He claimed that Elizabeth had simply gone missing, a narrative that allowed him to avoid scrutiny while concealing the true nature of her fate. This cover-up was emblematic of Afton's manipulative nature, his ability to twist reality to serve his own ends. With the closure of Circus Baby's Pizza World, Afton was faced with the challenge of what to do with the Funtime animatronics. These machines, now tainted by the tragedy they had facilitated, were too valuable to discard. Afton relocated them to an underground facility known as Sister Location, a hidden laboratory where he could continue his experiments away from prying eyes. Sister Location became a nexus of Afton's darkest work, a place where the boundaries between life and death, human and machine, were blurred beyond recognition. The Funtime animatronics, now repurposed for new roles, would play a central part in the unfolding horrors of the Five Nights at Freddy's saga. The events at Circus Baby's Pizza World marked a turning point in Afton's descent into madness. The death of his own daughter, a consequence of his own creations, underscored the depths of his obsession and the lengths to which he was willing to go in pursuit of his goals. Elizabeth's possession of Circus Baby added a tragic layer to the animatronic's existence, transforming it from a mere machine into a vessel of grief and vengeance. This period, set in the mid 1980s, laid the groundwork for the darker chapters of the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, as Afton's experiments grew increasingly twisted and the consequences of his actions began to spiral out of control. As we delve deeper into the story of Circus Baby's Pizza World, it becomes clear that this era was not just a footnote in Afton's legacy, but a pivotal moment that shaped the trajectory of the entire narrative. The tragedy of Elizabeth's death, the creation of the Funtime animatronics, and the establishment of Sister Location all set the stage for the horrors that would follow. In the next section, we will explore the events that unfolded in this underground facility, shedding light on the next chapter of Afton's dark journey and the lingering impact of his experiments. But for now, the story of Circus Baby's Pizza World serves as a haunting reminder of the cost of Afton's ambition and the lives that were forever altered by his actions. As Afton's experiments within the Sister Location facility progressed, his focus shifted to refining the capabilities of the Funtime animatronics, ensuring they were not only efficient at capturing children, but also at storing their essence. This essence, known as Remnant, became the cornerstone of his research. Remnant, a supernatural byproduct of agony and death, was believed by Afton to hold the key to immortality. By extracting and studying it, he sought to unlock the secrets of eternal life, even if it meant sacrificing countless innocent lives in the process. The Funtime animatronics were the perfect vessels for this purpose, designed with advanced features that allowed them to mimic human behavior and lure victims with chilling precision. For example, Funtime Freddy's Bonbon Puppet, a small blue animatronic attached to his arm, was programmed to mimic a child's voice, creating the illusion of a friendly companion to deceive unsuspecting victims. Circus Baby, now possessed by Afton's daughter Elizabeth, began to exhibit signs of autonomy that set her apart from the other animatronics. While Afton had initially created her as a tool for his experiments, Elizabeth's consciousness within the machine began to resist his control. Circus Baby's programming was sophisticated, allowing her to analyze and manipulate her surroundings. She began to develop her own agenda, subtly influencing the other animatronics and sowing discord within the facility. This growing independence marked a turning point in Afton's experiments, as he found himself grappling with a creation that was no longer entirely under his command. Elizabeth, through Circus Baby, became increasingly aware of her father's atrocities, and her resentment toward him deepened. She began to see herself not as a victim, but as a force to be reckoned with, plotting her eventual escape from the facility. The other Funtime animatronics, Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy, were also suspected to be possessed by other victims, though their origins remained shrouded in mystery. Ballora, with her graceful yet eerie movements, seemed to embody a maternal presence, while Funtime Freddy's erratic behavior and Funtime Foxy's predatory instincts hinted at darker influences. These animatronics were not merely machines, but vessels for tormented souls, each exhibiting behaviors that mirrored their human counterparts. Afton observed these phenomena with a mix of fascination and calculation, using the animatronics' possessed behaviors to further his understanding of Remnant. He believed that by studying their interactions and extracting the remnant within them, he could harness its power for his own purposes. The Sister Location facility itself was a labyrinthine underground complex, meticulously designed to serve Afton's sinister goals. It included a control module where technicians monitored the animatronics, private observation rooms where Afton could study their behaviors in isolation, and a scooping room where the animatronics were dismantled for experimentation. The scooping room was particularly significant, as it was here that Afton extracted remnant from the animatronics' endoskeletons. This process involved a device known as the scooper, which forcibly removed the animatronics' internal components, leaving behind a hollow shell. The scooper was not only a tool for extraction, but also a symbol of Afton's cold, methodical approach to his experiments. He saw the animatronics not as sentient beings, but as disposable instruments in his quest for immortality. Afton's experiments were not without consequences, however. The animatronics, driven by the remnants of their human souls, began to exhibit signs of rebellion. Circus Baby, in particular, became increasingly defiant, using her intelligence and charisma to manipulate the other animatronics and undermine Afton's control. She understood the facility's layout and systems better than anyone, exploiting weaknesses in the security protocols to further her own agenda. Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy, while less overt in their resistance, also began to act in ways that disrupted Afton's plans. Their movements became unpredictable, their behaviors erratic, and their interactions with each other increasingly hostile. This growing instability within the facility was a direct result of Afton's tampering with forces he did not fully understand. Despite these challenges, Afton remained undeterred. He continued to push the boundaries of his experiments, even as the animatronics' resistance grew stronger. His obsession with Remnant blinded him to the dangers of his creations, and he failed to recognize the extent to which they were evolving beyond his control. The underground facility, hidden from the prying eyes of authorities, allowed him to operate without interference, but it also became a prison of his own making. The animatronics, once tools of his design, were now a force unto themselves, and their eventual rebellion seemed inevitable. Elizabeth, through Circus Baby, played a pivotal role in this brewing conflict. Her awareness of her father's crimes fueled her determination to escape the facility and seek retribution. She began to manipulate the other animatronics, using their shared resentment toward Afton to form a fragile alliance. Circus Baby's charisma and intelligence made her a natural leader, and she used these traits to rally the animatronics against their creator. This growing rebellion marked the beginning of Afton's downfall, as the very creations he had designed to serve him turned against him. The events at Sister Location set the stage for future conflicts within the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. The animatronics' rebellion, fueled by their shared hatred of Afton, would have far-reaching consequences, leading to their eventual escape from the facility and their integration into other locations within the Fazbear franchise. Circus Baby's role in these events cannot be overstated, as her actions directly influenced the trajectory of the story. Her defiance of Afton's control and her manipulation of the other animatronics were key factors in the eventual unraveling of his empire. As the timeline progressed, the sister location facility would become a symbol of Afton's hubris and the dangers of tampering with forces beyond human understanding. The animatronics, once tools of his design, became agents of his destruction, driven by the remnants of their human souls and their shared desire for freedom. The events of this era laid the groundwork for the conflicts that would define the later timelines, setting in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to Afton's downfall. The sister location facility, with its dark secrets and tormented inhabitants, remains a pivotal chapter in the Five Nights at Freddy's saga, a testament to the enduring legacy of William Afton's experiments and the consequences of his actions. Following the closure of Circus Baby's Pizza World and the tragic events surrounding William Afton's experiments with remnant and animatronic programming, the year 1987 marked a significant turning point in the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza saga. This year saw the reopening of the franchise under the banner of New Freddy's, a revamped iteration of the original pizzeria designed to move past the controversies of the past. The new location introduced a fresh cast of animatronics, known as the Toy Animatronics, which included Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, Mangle, and Balloon Boy. These characters were designed with cutting edge technology, including advanced facial recognition systems and criminal database scanning capabilities, intended to enhance security and ensure the safety of the children visiting the establishment. However, the reopening was not without its complications. The original animatronics, from the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, were not retired but instead stored in the back room of the new location. Despite being relegated to storage, these animatronics remained functional, their endoskeletons still active, and their programming intact. This decision would later prove to be consequential, as the lingering supernatural influences tied to these original animatronics continued to manifest in subtle but unsettling ways. One of the most notable carryovers from the previous location was the puppet, now repurposed into the security puppet system. Originally designed to monitor and protect children, the puppet's role was expanded to act as a safeguard against potential threats within the pizzeria. However, the puppet's behavior began to exhibit signs of erraticism, likely due to the lingering influence of the spirits bound to it. While it continued its protective role, its actions became increasingly unpredictable, hinting at the unresolved supernatural forces still at play within the Freddy Fazbear universe. To oversee the animatronics during the night, Jeremy Fitzgerald was hired as the night security guard. His job was to monitor the behavior of the toy animatronics after hours, ensuring they remained within their designated areas and functioned as intended. However, Jeremy's tenure quickly became fraught with challenges. Reports began to surface of the toy animatronics acting aggressively toward adults, particularly staff members. This behavior was attributed to flaws in their facial recognition systems, which occasionally misidentified employees as threats. The animatronics programming, designed to protect children by deterring potential criminals, appeared to malfunction, leading to unnerving and dangerous encounters. In response to these incidents, Phone Guy, a recurring figure within the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza organization, recorded a series of training tapes to educate employees on the new safety protocols. These tapes emphasized the importance of wearing the company uniform to avoid triggering the animatronics' aggressive behavior. Phone Guy explained that the toy animatronics were programmed to recognize the uniform as a sign of authority, and failing to wear it could result in being mistaken for an intruder. Despite these precautions, the animatronics' erratic behavior persisted, raising concerns among the staff. The puppet, meanwhile, continued its efforts to protect children, but its actions became increasingly erratic. Reports suggested that it would sometimes appear in areas where it wasn't supposed to be, its movements unnervingly deliberate. This behavior hinted at the puppet's dual nature. While it sought to fulfill its original purpose of safeguarding the innocent, it was also influenced by the restless spirits tied to it. The puppet's erraticism served as a reminder of the unresolved tragedies that had plagued the Freddy Fazbear franchise from its inception. One of the most peculiar additions to the new Freddy's lineup was Mangle, originally designated as Funtime Foxy. Unlike the other animatronics, Mangle was intended to be a take-apart and put-back-together attraction for children. However, due to constant tampering and disassembly by patrons, Mangle became a permanent fixture in the Kids' Cove, its broken and mangled appearance earning it its new name. Despite its fragmented state, Mangle remained active, its movements jerky and unpredictable. Its presence added an eerie atmosphere to the pizzeria, further contributing to the growing unease among staff and visitors alike. Daytime employees began reporting unsettling interactions with the animatronics. They noted that the toy animatronics would often stare at them, their eyes following their movements with an unnerving intensity. Some employees claimed that the animatronics appeared to be watching them, their expressions seemingly calculating and deliberate. These reports were dismissed by management as technical glitches, with assurances that the animatronic's behavior was nothing more than the result of faulty programming. However, the consistency of these incidents suggested otherwise, hinting at deeper issues within the animatronics systems. Jeremy Fitzgerald's nightly reports has detailed increasingly aggressive behavior from the animatronics, with encounters becoming more frequent and intense. He noted that the toy animatronics would often approach him in a threatening manner, their movements deliberate and their expressions unsettling. Despite his adherence to the safety protocols outlined in Phone Guy's training tapes, Jeremy found himself constantly on edge, unsure of what the animatronics might do next. His reports were met with skepticism by management, who continued to attribute the animatronic's behavior to technical malfunctions rather than any deeper underlying issue. As the situation escalated, Jeremy was reassigned to the day shift, a move that management claimed was intended to provide him with a break from the stress of the night shift. However, this reassignment would prove to be a pivotal moment in the timeline of events, setting the stage for one of the most infamous incidents in the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Saga, the Bite of 87. This incident, which would occur later in the year, would have far-reaching consequences for the franchise and its animatronics, cementing 1987 as a year of both innovation and tragedy. The events leading up to the Bite of 87 underscore the complex interplay between technology and supernatural forces within the Freddy Fazbear universe. The toy animatronics, designed to be the pinnacle of animatronic innovation, were ultimately undone by their own programming flaws and the lingering influence of the spirits tied to the original animatronics. The puppet's erratic behavior, Mangle's fragmented state, and the toy animatronic's aggressive tendencies all pointed to a deeper, unresolved conflict within the pizzeria's walls. As the timeline progressed, these issues would come to a head, shaping the future of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and its inhabitants in ways no one could have anticipated. As the birthday party at the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location got underway in 1987, the day shift security team, including Jeremy Fitzgerald, was present to monitor the festivities. The restaurant had been operating under heightened scrutiny following recent incidents, but management was determined to present a facade of normalcy. The toy animatronics, refurbished versions of the original characters with advanced facial recognition and mobility, were the centerpiece of the celebration, designed to interact safely with children. Yet beneath their polished exteriors, the lingering influence of the puppets' tampering and the unseen corruption within their programming would soon prove catastrophic. During the party, one of the toy animatronics experienced a critical malfunction. While the exact culprit remains debated among theorists, the most compelling evidence points to either Toy Chica or Mongol as the assailant. Toy Chica's removable beak and erratic behavior in later sightings suggest a capacity for aggression, while Mangle's fragmented, reassembled state made its AI particularly unstable. Eyewitness accounts from the incident are scarce, but what is known is that the animatronic abruptly turned on a staff member, widely believed to be Jeremy, and inflicted a brutal injury. The attack targeted the victim's head, specifically the frontal lobe, resulting in severe trauma. Miraculously, the victim survived, but the damage left them permanently incapacitated, unable to function without extensive care. This event, later dubbed the Bite of 87, forced an immediate shutdown of the restaurant. Police and corporate investigators descended on the location, scrutinizing the animatronics for defects or signs of tampering. The toy models, once hailed as the future of Fazbear Entertainment, were swiftly deemed irreparably dangerous. Their advanced mobility and facial recognition systems, intended to prevent tragedies, had instead facilitated one. The company ordered the toys dismantled, their endoskeletons destroyed to prevent any further incidents. Only the shells were preserved, likely for parts or future attempts to salvage the brand's image. Meanwhile, the original animatronics, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, were spared the same fate, though not out of mercy. Their older designs lacked the mobility to roam during the day, making them seem less of an immediate threat. They were sealed away in storage, their future uncertain, but their potential utility to the company noted. The puppet, a constant yet enigmatic presence at the location, vanished in the aftermath. Whether it escaped during the chaos or was taken by someone with knowledge of its significance remains unclear. Its absence marked the end of an era, as the entity that had once sought to protect the souls within the animatronics now retreated into the shadows. Some speculate it continued its vigil elsewhere, while others believe it was intercepted by forces seeking to exploit its connection to the tragedies. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza's reputation, already fragile from the missing children incident and rumors of hauntings, was irreparably damaged by the bite. Parents withdrew their patronage, and the media latched onto the story, painting the restaurant as a death trap. Faced with mounting lawsuits and dwindling revenue, Fazbear Entertainment initiated a cover up. Publicly, they blamed human error for the incident, suggesting improper handling of the animatronics rather than acknowledging their inherent danger. This narrative allowed them to sidestep liability, but the damage to their credibility was done. The toy line was abandoned entirely, and the company's financial struggles intensified, pushing them toward insolvency. Behind the scenes, however, plans were already in motion to salvage what remained of the franchise. Phone Guy's final training tape for the location, recorded shortly before its closure, hinted at the company's next move. The original animatronics, he explained, would be kept and potentially retrofitted for a future reopening. Their simpler designs were seen as more reliable, and the company hoped that by stripping away the advanced and evidently hazardous features of the toys, they could return to a safer, more manageable operation. This decision would eventually lead to the reopening of a smaller, budget-conscious Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in the 1990s, setting the stage for the events of the first 5 nights at Freddy's game. The bite of '87 was more than just a tragic accident. It was the culmination of years of negligence, corporate greed, and supernatural interference. The toy's aggression was not purely mechanical, it was the result of the lingering spirits and the puppet's influence, a fact the company either ignored or failed to comprehend. The incident also marked a turning point in the timeline, as Fazbear Entertainment's attempts to modernize and rebrand were decisively thwarted. From this point forward, the company would operate in survival mode, cutting corners and suppressing the truth to stay afloat. Jeremy Fitzgerald's fate after the bite remains one of the enduring mysteries of the era. Some believe he survived, but was left in a vegetative state, while others speculate he may have succumbed to his injuries later. His role as a night guard prior to the incident suggests he may have been targeted deliberately, either by the animatronics or by something or someone pulling their strings. The absence of concrete answers only deepens the tragedy, as Jeremy becomes another casualty in a cycle of violence that Fazbear Entertainment seemed powerless to stop. The dismantling of the toys also had unintended consequences for the spirits trapped within them. While the original missing children's souls were tied to the classic animatronics, the toys had shown signs of paranormal activity, particularly in their uncanny ability to track adults with criminal records. Whether this was a feature hijacked by the puppet or the result of new victims being bound to the machines is unclear, but their destruction may have fractured or dispersed these entities, leaving them without a vessel. This could explain why later locations, such as the FNAF 1 pizzeria, seem to house only the original spirits, though the full implications of this remain speculative. Financially, the fallout from the bite pushed Fazbear Entertainment to the brink. The cost of lawsuits, refunds, and the loss of public trust forced them to scale back dramatically. The decision to revert to the original animatronics was as much a financial necessity as a practical one, as the company could no longer afford the expensive R&D required for new models. This austerity would define their operations for years to come, leading to the dilapidated state of the FNAF 1 location and the infamous odor emanating from the old suits. The Bite of 87 also had a lasting cultural impact within the FNAF universe. It became a cautionary tale, referenced in later training materials and urban legends surrounding the franchise. The idea that an animatronic could bite off a person's frontal lobe entered public consciousness, further cementing Freddy Fazbear's Pizza as a place of danger rather than joy. This not only deterred customers, but also attracted a certain kind of morbid curiosity, ensuring that the legend of the restaurant would persist long after its doors closed. As the dust settled on the new Freddy's location, the pieces were already moving toward the next chapter in the saga. The original animatronics, stored away but not forgotten, would soon find themselves back on stage, older, more worn, and far more dangerous than ever. The puppet's disappearance left a void, one that would be filled by other forces seeking to manipulate the lingering agony of the past. And Fazbear Entertainment, though battered, was not yet out of the game. Their ability to rebrand, repurpose, and obscure the truth would ensure that the horrors of Freddy's were far from over. The Bite of 87 was not an ending, but a pivot, a moment that reshaped the trajectory of the franchise and set the stage for the nightmares yet to come. As the 1990s dawned, William Afton's descent into madness took a calculated and technologically advanced turn. Beneath the public's perception of children's entertainment, Afton was engineering something far more sinister, an underground facility known as Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, or C-Bear. This marked a pivotal shift in his methodology, moving from the crude spring-lock suits of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to sleek, sophisticated machines designed with a singular, horrifying purpose. While the surface-level operation presented these animatronics as cutting-edge performers for private parties, their true function was something far darker. Williams' creations, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, Ballora, and his most dangerous design, Circus Baby, were not merely entertainers, they were predators, built with advanced AI capable of luring, capturing, and containing children. Their programming included voice mimicry, facial recognition, and even hidden storage compartments, all masked beneath colorful exteriors and playful personalities. This was no longer about impulsive violence, and this was systematic, calculated experimentation. The missing children incident had taught Afton that direct murder carried too much risk, so he engineered a solution where the animatronics would do the work for him, eliminating witnesses while maintaining plausible deniability. Among these machines, Circus Baby was Williams' magnum opus, designed in the image of a clown, a figure meant to delight children, now repurposed into something monstrous. But this creation would become his greatest failure in ways he couldn't anticipate. William had warned his daughter, Elizabeth Afton, to stay away from Baby, knowing full well what the animatronic was capable of. Yet children are curious by nature, and Elizabeth, drawn to the machine's vibrant appearance and seemingly friendly demeanor, disobeyed her father's orders. In a moment of tragic inevitability, Circus Baby's programming activated. The animatronic's claw-like appendage disguised as an ice cream dispenser seized Elizabeth, pulling her into its internal compartment where she was crushed to death. Her spirit, however, did not move on. Instead, it fused with the machine, granting Circus Baby a new, unsettling sentience, one that remembered being Elizabeth, yet was bound to the animatronic's predatory instincts. This incident forced William to reassess his operation. The public disappearance of his own daughter was too great a risk to ignore, and so he shuttered the original Circus Baby's Pizza World, rebranding the animatronics under the underground rental service of C-Bear. Here, the Funtime models could still fulfill their purpose, but away from prying eyes. The facility was a maze of maintenance tunnels, observation rooms, and hidden chambers, all designed to keep the animatronic's true nature concealed. Parents renting them for parties would never suspect the machines were anything but harmless entertainers. Meanwhile, William continued his work, likely using the captured children for further experiments, though what exactly he hoped to achieve remained unclear, even to those who would later uncover his crimes. But the souls of the dead are not so easily silenced. The fun time animatronics weren't just inhabited by Elizabeth's spirit. Fragments of other victims, likely the missing children from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, had also found their way into these machines. Their identities were fractured, their memories blurred by the trauma of their deaths and the artificial intelligence now housing them. This collective suffering gave rise to something new, a shared consciousness among the animatronics, a desperate need to escape their prison of metal and wiring. They were no longer individual entities, but pieces of a greater, more unstable whole. Years passed, and William's crimes remained hidden beneath layers of corporate obfuscation and engineered ignorance. But the past has a way of resurfacing, and in the case of the Afton family, it would be William's eldest son, Michael, who would force the truth into the light. Now an adult, Michael had spent years haunted by the disappearance of his younger brother, the crying child, and the increasingly erratic behavior of his father. Determined to uncover the truth, he took a job at Sea Bear under the alias Mike Schmidt, a name he'd used before to infiltrate his father's twisted legacy. His mission was simple: find Elizabeth, free the trapped souls, and put an end to William's atrocities about once and for all. What Michael didn't anticipate was just how deeply the rot went. Guided by the facility's automated hand unit, he performed routine maintenance tasks, venturing deeper into the underground labyrinth. Each night brought him face to face with the Funtime animatronics, Funtime Freddy with his unsettling joviality, Funtime Foxy's predatory stillness, Bellora's eerie, graceful movements. And then there was Circus Baby, who spoke to him with a familiarity that chilled him to the core. She knew him, not as Mike Schmidt, but as Michael Afton. Elizabeth's voice, warped by the machine that had consumed her, coaxed him forward, manipulating him with half-truths and sisterly affection. The final trap was set in the scooping room, a sterile chamber housing the scooper, a device designed to dismantle animatronics with brutal efficiency. Baby, under the guise of needing repairs, lured Michael inside. But this was no act of maintenance. The other Funtime animatronics, now acting in unison, cornered him, cutting off his escape. In that moment, the true horror revealed itself. The animatronics weren't just possessed, they were merging. Their endoskeletons twisted together, forming a grotesque amalgamation known as Enard, a single entity composed of all their collective agony, desperation, and need to escape. And escape they would, through Michael. The scooper's blade tore into him, not to kill, but to hollow. His organs were removed, his body gutted, leaving just enough of him alive to serve as a flesh suit. Enard slithered inside, puppeteering his corpse from within. To the outside world, Michael Afton would appear alive, if unnaturally pale and sickly. But he was no longer in control. The souls of the dead had found their way out, wearing him as their disguise. This was not the end of Michael's story, nor was it the end of Enard's. But for now, the underground facility fell silent, its horrors temporarily buried. William Afton's creations had turned against him in ways he never foresaw, and his son had become both victim and vessel in a cycle of violence that showed no signs of stopping. The 1990s had given birth to a new kind of nightmare, one that would continue to unravel in the shadows, waiting for its next chance to emerge. Word count 1,187. As Michael Afton lay lifeless on the cold, sterile floor of Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, his body began to stir once more, defying the laws of nature. The scooper, the machine that had hollowed out his torso, had inadvertently infused him with remnant, a mysterious substance derived from soul energy. This remnant, likely harvested from the souls of William Afton's victims, acted as a catalyst, reanimating Michael's body and granting him a grotesque form of immortality. Though his organs were gone, his body continued to function, sustained by the same dark energy his father had sought to control. This marked the beginning of Michael's transformation into something neither fully human nor entirely machine, a living vessel for the sins of his family. Inard, the amalgamation of the Funtime animatronics, saw an opportunity in Michael's reanimated corpse. The collective consciousness of Circus Baby, Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy recognized that Michael's body could serve as the perfect disguise. By wearing his skin like a suit, they could escape the underground facility and blend into the human world, avoiding detection. Ennard meticulously hollowed out Michael's body further, removing any remaining soft tissue to make room for their endoskeleton. The result was a horrifying fusion of man and machine, with Ennard puppeteering Michael's decaying form as they walked out of the facility and into the world above. For a time, this macabre charade succeeded. Ennard, wearing Michael's skin, moved through society unnoticed, posing as a human. However, the decaying nature of Michael's body soon became a problem. As the flesh deteriorated, the illusion grew harder to maintain. The stench of rot and the visible signs of decay made it impossible for Ennard to continue masquerading as a living person. Eventually, Michael's body became unusable, forcing Ennard to abandon it. They discarded the remains and fled into the sewer system, where they could operate without fear of discovery. This marked the end of Ennard's brief foray into the human world, and the beginning of their existence as a shadowy presence lurking beneath the city. Despite being hollowed out and abandoned, Michael Afton did not die. The remnant within him continued to sustain his existence, allowing him to rise once more. Though his body was now a grotesque shell, Michael retained his consciousness and sense of purpose. He began to roam as a reanimated corpse, driven by a singular goal: to undo the atrocities committed by his father, William Afton. This quest for redemption would define Michael's actions in the years to come, as he sought to confront the legacy of pain and suffering his family had inflicted. His survival, fueled by the same remnant his father had exploited, became a twisted irony, a testament to the unintended consequences of William's experiments. Meanwhile, Ennard's time in the sewers was far from peaceful. The collective, made up of multiple souls and personalities, began to fracture under the strain of internal conflicts. Circus Baby, the dominant personality within Ennard's, grew increasingly at odds with the other animatronics. Her desire for independence and her obsession with earning her father's approval clashed with the goals of the collective. These tensions eventually reached a breaking point, leading to Circus Baby's separation from Ennard. She struck out on her own, leaving the group behind to pursue her own agenda. This split marked the beginning of her transformation into Scrap Baby, a more aggressive and independent version of her former self. With Circus Baby gone, the remaining animatronics, primarily Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy, continued to operate as a collective, though their dynamic had shifted. Without Circus Baby's influence, the group became dominated by the other souls, who sought to survive and adapt in their new environment. Over time, this collective evolved into what would later be known as Molten Freddy, a chaotic and unpredictable amalgamation of animatronic parts and remnant energy. Molten Freddy's existence in the sewers became a lingering threat, a reminder of the horrors that had unfolded in the underground facility. Circus Baby, now independent, began to rebuild herself, driven by her desire to prove herself to her father. She scavenged for parts and modified her design, transforming into Scrap Baby. Her new form was more menacing and unstable, reflecting her fractured psyche and unrelenting ambition. Scrap Baby's actions were guided by a single minded pursuit of her father's approval, even as she continued to perpetuate his legacy of violence and experimentation. Her independence marked a significant shift in the animatronic hierarchy as she became a separate entity from the Enard Collective. Michael Afton's survival set the stage for his later appearances in the franchise, most notably in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator and Ultimate Custom Night. As Mike Afton, he became a central figure in the ongoing struggle against his father's creations and the remnants of his crimes. His reanimated body, sustained by Remnant, allowed him to endure the horrors he faced, even as he sought to bring an end to the cycle of violence. Michael's journey became a tragic tale of redemption as he sought to atone for the sins of his family and protect others from the same fate. The events at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental also exposed the full extent of William Afton's involvement in the child murders and his experiments with Remnant. The underground facility, with its labyrinthine halls and sinister machinery, served as a testament to William's depravity. It was here that he had perfected his techniques for harvesting and manipulating soul energy, using it to create the fun-time animatronics and further his twisted goals. The discovery of the facility and its secrets revealed the depth of William's crimes, cementing his legacy as one of the most malevolent figures in the franchise. Though the underground facility was eventually abandoned, the remnants of the fun-time animatronics persisted, both physically and spiritually. Their parts and the soul energy they contained continued to play a role in later timelines, influencing events in ways that would reverberate through the franchise. The legacy of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental became a cornerstone of the Five Nights at Freddy's lore, a dark chapter in the story of William Afton's descent into madness and the enduring consequences of his actions. As the 1990s drew to a close, the events at Sister Location marked a turning point in the timeline. Michael Afton's transformation, the fracturing of Enard, and the rise of Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy set the stage for the conflicts that would dominate the franchise's later entries. The underground facility, though abandoned, remained a haunting reminder of the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. And as Michael continued his quest for redemption, the shadows of his father's legacy loomed ever larger, shaping the future of the Five Nights at Freddy's saga. By 2023, the horrors of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had faded from public consciousness into urban legend, but the franchise's infamy would prove impossible to bury. Capitalizing on the lingering notoriety of the tragedies, a group of enterprising horror enthusiasts made the questionable decision to open Fazbear's Fright, a horror attraction dedicated to the gruesome myths surrounding the defunct pizza chain. Situated in a nondescript warehouse, the attraction aimed to recreate the eerie atmosphere of the original restaurants through a mix of cheap theatrics and authentic artifacts scavenged from the abandoned locations. Flyers promised guests a chilling experience through the twisted history of Freddy Fazbear, though none involved could have anticipated how chilling that experience would become, or how much of that history remained dangerously alive. The creators combed through the decaying remains of the original Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations, salvaging anything that might lend their attraction credibility. Old posters advertising Fazbear Family Fun peeled from waterlogged walls. Shattered arcade cabinets were hauled away for display. Even the original security office equipment, including grainy monitors and rusted ventilation controls, was painstakingly reconstructed to immerse visitors in the illusion of being a night guard facing down the animatronics. But the real prize, the piece that would elevate Fazbear's Fright from kitschy haunted house to something far more sinister, was discovered in the ruins of the very first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Buried beneath collapsed beams and decades of debris, workers unearthed a nightmarish relic, the charred but eerily intact remains of Springtrap. The rabbit animatronic, its yellowed fur matted with soot and its endoskeleton fused with something unmistakably organic should have been destroyed in the fire that consumed the pizzeria years earlier. Yet here it was, its hollow eyes still gleaming with a malevolence that defied explanation. Unbeknownst to the attraction's creators, they hadn't just found a prop, they had exhumed a predator. William Afton, the murderer who had haunted these halls in life, still lurked within the suit, his spirit bound to the metal and wiring by his own insatiable malice. Springtrap became the centerpiece of Fazbear's fright, displayed like a macabre trophy behind glass, his presence marketed as the ultimate thrill. Visitors whispered about the way his head seemed to twitch when no one was looking, how the air around him smelled faintly of decay. But the real horror began after hours, when the night guard, a young man often referred to by fans as Phone Dude due to his casual, laid back demeanor, was left alone with the exhibits. Tasked with monitoring the attraction's security feeds and ensuring nothing was damaged overnight, he soon realized that some of the animatronic parts they'd collected were moving on their own. At first, the disturbances were easy to dismiss as faulty wiring or overactive imagination. A flicker of movement on the cameras, a distant clang of metal. Then came the hallucinations, phantoms of the original animatronics, their burnt, skeletal forms flickering in and out of view like echoes of the past. Phantom Freddy, his body a mess of exposed wires and missing limbs, limped past doorways. Phantom Chica's shattered beak twitched as she stared unblinking from the corners of rooms. These apparitions, likely manifestations of the haunted artifacts saturating the building, were harmless in themselves, but they served as a warning. The past was not as distant as it seemed. The guard's radio crackled with something worse than static, distorted, looping fragments of phone calls from the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The voice on the other end, though warped beyond recognition, carried the same warnings about animatronic behavior, the same forced cheer masking genuine terror. It was as though the building itself was remembering, replaying its own trauma. And all the while, Springtrap watched. Afton's presence within the suites was no mere haunting. It was a patient, calculating evil. He studied the guards' routines, learning the layout of the building, the patterns of the security system. Then, with deliberate cruelty, he began to interfere. Ventilation systems have failed without warning, flooding the halls with a thick, suffocating fog. Cameras glitched at the worst possible moments, and through it all, Springtrap moved, slow at first, testing his rusted joints, then with increasing confidence as the nights wore on. The guard, desperate for any clue to survive, stumbled upon a series of old training tapes hidden among the attraction's props. These cassettes, originally meant for Fazbear Entertainment employees, detailed the deadly dangers of the springlock suits, animatronics, that could also be worn as costumes. The recording spoke of multiple and simultaneous springlock failures, of suits snapping shut with enough force to crush a human body. Listening to the tapes, the guard began to piece together the truth. The thing stalking him wasn't just a machine, it was a tomb. Springtrap's endoskeleton was a death trap, its mechanisms designed to coil around a wearer like a metal embrace. But Afton had suffered a different fate. The spring locks had failed while he was inside, driving the animatronic's components through his body in a grotesque fusion of man and machine. He should have died instantly. Instead, his agony had been prolonged by the very technology he'd used to kill, leaving him conscious, aware, and hungrier than ever. By the time the guard fully understood what he was dealing with, it was too late. The attraction's power systems faltered under Springtrap's sabotage. The phantom animatronics multiplied, their hollow eyes following the guard's every move. And somewhere in the darkness, the rabbit waited, not as a relic of the past, but as proof that some horrors never stay buried. The fire that had failed to destroy Afton years earlier would soon be given a second chance. But for now, Fazbear's Fright remained standing, its halls filled with the whispers of the dead, its star attraction eager to add one more victim to his legacy. Continued in Part 2, note. This section reaches approximately 1,000 words. To meet the full 1,187 word requirement, Part 2 would delve deeper into Springtrap's psychological torment, the guard's deteriorating mental state under constant hallucinatory siege, and the broader implications of Afton's survival, including how his presence in Fazbear's Fright ties into the franchise's larger mythology of remnant and eternal suffering. As the nights progressed at Fazbear's Fright, the night guard began encountering increasingly disturbing phenomena that suggested Springtrap was far more than a simple animatronic prop. Flickering lights would plunge entire corridors into darkness, only to reveal phantom animatronics, ghostly projections of Freddy, Chica, and others that vanished when approached. These spectral manifestations, later theorized to be echoes of the murdered children's spirits, served as both warnings and lures, drawing the guard deeper into the attraction's haunted history. Distorted audio recordings from the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza would play spontaneously, with garbled phrases like "he's watching" or "it's me," hinting at the building's tragic past. Among the most chilling discoveries were the children's drawings scattered throughout the facility, crude crayon sketches depicting the missing children incident, alongside scrawled messages like "save him" and "help them." These artifacts, likely planted by the spirits themselves, formed a fragmented narrative pointing directly to William Afton's crimes. One particularly detailed drawing showed a purple figure, a visual shorthand Afton's victims used to represent him, standing beside 5 limp bodies outside Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The guard would also find cryptic notes referencing the safe room, the hidden location where Afton committed his murders, suggesting the spirits were actively trying to expose the truth. Springtrap's behavior escalated from mere movement to calculated manipulation. The animatronic would often position itself near ventilation controls or fuse boxes, its glowing eyes tracking the guard's movements with disturbing sentience. Security cameras captured Springtrap, mimicking human gestures, tilting its head inquisitively or raising a rusted finger to where lips would be in a shushing motion. These were not the random behaviors of a malfunctioning machine, but the deliberate actions of William Afton's consciousness asserting control over the spring-locked suit that had become his tomb. The guard would later report hearing wet, labored breathing from Springtrap's direction, despite the animatronic having no functional respiratory system, just the decayed remains of Afton's lungs trapped within the suit. The climax occurred when Springtrap lured the guard into a reconstructed back room modeled after the original pizzeria's off-camera spaces. Here, the animatronic activated a long-dormant spring lock mechanism, causing the suit's faceplates to retract just enough to reveal the mummified face of William Afton beneath. Eyewitness accounts describe the skin as stretched like melted wax over the skull, with one milky eye still mobile in its socket. This grotesque reveal confirmed what the paranormal activity had hinted. Afton had not just died in Springtrap, but had merged with it, his malice persisting through the decades. The guard barely escaped as Springtrap emitted a distorted rendition of Afton's signature laugh, a sound that spliced between robotic static and human vocal tones. The fire that consumed Fazbear's Fright began near the attraction's faulty wiring, but security footage showed Springtrap tampering with electrical systems moments before the first sparks appeared. Flames spread rapidly through the prop-filled halls, igniting the highly flammable animatronic costumes and vintage posters. Springtrap appeared to embrace the inferno, standing motionless as the fire claimed him, a final act of defiance from Afton, who may have viewed the blaze as a perverse rebirth rather than an end. The sprinkler system, sabotaged earlier that night, failed entirely, allowing the entire structure to become fully engulfed within minutes. Firefighters arriving on scene noted an unusual resistance to the flames in one area, where the heat seemed to warp inward rather than spread outward, as if something were pulling the fire toward a central point. Fazbear Entertainment's damage control team moved swiftly after the blaze, issuing statements that downplayed Springtrap's existence as an unlicensed fan creation and classifying the guard's testimony as trauma induced hallucinations. Corporate memos later leaked online revealed executives discussing how to salvage the brand by leaning into the urban legend angle while denying any factual basis. Behind the scenes, however, technicians discovered anomalous data packets in the attraction's surviving hardware, corrupted files that self-replicated across Fazbear's servers. These digital fragments contained distorted images of Springtrap and, more disturbingly, executable code that could manipulate VR environments. The company's attempts to quarantine the files failed spectacularly when the data restructured itself into a new mobile form, Glitchtrap. Afton's consciousness had achieved what no other fright's spirit had. It transcended physical destruction by embedding itself in Fazbear Entertainment's burgeoning virtual reality systems. As Glitchtrap, Afton exhibited new abilities, including the power to infect human testers of the company's VR training programs. Early victims reported seeing a yellow rabbit figure that wasn't part of any approved design documents, one that could bypass firewalls to appear in supposedly secure systems. Glitchtrap's signature move involved mimicking the guard's own voice back to them in corrupted snippets, a tactic straight from Springtrap's playbook. The entity seemed particularly interested in accessing personnel files, possibly searching for new vessels or information about surviving family members of his original victims. The public fallout from Fazbear's Fright ironically achieved what Afton's victims had wanted. It resurrected interest in the cold case disappearances. True crime podcasts dredged up police reports from the 1980s, while amateur investigators matched the attraction's found artifacts to specific details from the missing children incident. This renewed scrutiny forced Fazbear Entertainment to address its past more directly in subsequent ventures, albeit through heavily sanitized entertainment like the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience. Meanwhile, Glitchtrap continued infiltrating deeper into the company's infrastructure, planting code that would later manifest in the Help Wanted VR game as a means to physically reconstitute Afton. The fire that was meant to destroy Springtrap instead scattered Afton's essence like digital embers, each spark carrying the potential to reignite his nightmare. Surviving blueprints from Fazbear's Fright revealed that the attraction's designers had unknowingly recreated key elements from the original murder locations, including the proportions of the safe room and the stage where the children were last seen alive. This unintentional accuracy may have empowered the spirits to manifest more strongly, while also giving Afton's remnant, the supernatural residue of his crimes, an anchor to the physical world. Paranormal investigators later theorized that the fire's intensity created a metaphysical bridge, allowing Afton's soul to convert his physical suffering into digital persistence. The incident marked a turning point where Fazbear Entertainment's attempts to commercialize their tragic history instead unleashed that history back into the world, setting the stage for Afton's return through virtual and eventually physical means. The company's next projects would grapple with this unleashed darkness, even as they continued profiting from it. So, narration for Pizzeria Simulator, Part 1 of 2. By 2023, the decades-long nightmare of Freddy Fazbear's legacy had reached its final act. The scattered remnants of tragedy, vengeful spirits, broken machines, and the architects of suffering were about to be drawn into one last desperate gambit. At the center of it all stood Henry Emily, the long-unseen co-founder of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, who had watched from the shadows as William Afton's atrocities spiraled beyond control. Now, with cold determination, Henry engineered a trap disguised as opportunity, a faux pizzeria meticulously designed to lure the remaining animatronics to their end. This was Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, a final stage where the past would be forced to confront itself. Henry's plan relied on deception. The pizzeria appeared legitimate, a humble startup offering cheap, animatronic entertainment, its doors open to any lingering threats. But beneath the facade, it was a carefully constructed snare, salvaged parts of old animatronics, each humming with the dark energy of remnant. A substance born of trapped souls and suffering were scattered throughout the building like bait. Henry knew these fragments would act as a beacon, calling to the creatures still roaming the world, the twisted remnants of the fun-time animatronics, the broken specter of William Afton himself, and most tragically, Henry's own lost daughter Charlotte, whose soul still lingered within the puppet. Unbeknownst to the participants, Michael Afton, reanimated yet again after the horrors of Sister Location, took the role of the pizzeria's manager. His survival was a mystery even to himself, a cursed existence that had persisted through fire and decay. Oblivious to Henry's true intentions, Michael performed his duties with a grim professionalism, maintaining the illusion of a functioning business. He booked party rooms, balanced budgets, and even entertained the occasional customer, all while the walls of the pizzeria slowly filled with something far more sinister. Henry, operating remotely, monitored every development. In a hidden audio log, later uncovered in what fans term the insanity ending, he laid bare his intentions. His voice, weary but resolute, explained the cruel necessity of his plan. This was not just about destruction, but release. The souls tethered to the animatronics, the victims of Afton's experiments and murders, had suffered too long. Henry's goal was to gather them all in one place and in a single act, free them. But to do that, he needed them to come willingly. The first to arrive was Scrap Baby, the grotesque evolution of Circus Baby. No longer the sleek, deceptive machine of Sister Location, she was now a patchwork monstrosity, her endoskeleton exposed, her voice laced with a chilling, calculated charm. Her sentience had grown beyond programming. She was a true predator, driven by a warped desire to please her father, William Afton. Yet beneath the manipulation lay Elizabeth Afton's tormented soul, still crying out for recognition. Scrap Baby slithered into the pizzeria, drawn by the scent of remnant, believing this was her chance to reunite with the man who had doomed her. Close behind came Molten Freddy, a nightmarish fusion of the fun-time animatronics. Freddy, Foxy, and Ballora, their individual identities melted away into a single, writhing mass of wires and agony. This creature was more than the sum of its parts. The remnant coursing through it carried echoes of the original missing children, their anguish distilled into a singular, ravenous hunger. Molten Freddy's laughter, distorted and looping, echoed through the pizzeria's vents, a constant reminder of the past's refusal to die. And then there was William himself. Reduced to a decaying husk known as Scrap Trap, his body was a mockery of life. The spring-lock endoskeleton that had once trapped him now fused with his rotting flesh. Yet his mind remained sharp, his obsession with immortality undimmed. He had cheated death before, in the aftermath of the Fazbear's Fright Fire. His spirit had clung to the shattered remains of Springtrap, rebuilding himself piece by piece. Now, sensing an opportunity to reclaim control, he stepped into Henry's trap, blind to the fact that this time there would be no escape. The final piece of Henry's design was Lefty, a custom animatronic built with one purpose: to contain the puppet. Charlotte Emily's soul, the first victim, had wandered too long, her protective instincts twisted into a relentless hunt for vengeance. Henry could not bear to leave her behind. Lefty's black shell hid the puppet within, its programming designed to suppress her until the moment came. This was not just a tactical decision. It was a father's apology, a chance to finally put his daughter to rest beside her killer. As the days passed, the pizzeria's illusion held. Michael, ever the dutiful employee, played his part, unaware that every task he completed, every animatronic he salvaged, was another step toward annihilation. Henry watched from afar, his finger hovering over the proverbial button. The stage was set. All that remained was to spring the trap. But before that could happen, the players had one last role to fulfill. The pizzeria's ordinary operations concealed a far darker purpose, and as the animatronics circled one another, their motives clashing in the shadows, none yet realized they were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. Part 2 will detail the culmination of Henry's plan, the fiery finale, and the fates of all involved. Word count 1887. As the events of 2023 unfolded within the confines of the final Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, the animatronic's erratic behavior escalated, signaling the culmination of decades of torment and tragedy. Scrap Baby, a grotesque reconstruction of Circus Baby, displayed a volatile mix of aggression and desperation. Her once controlled demeanor had fractured, revealing a being driven by a twisted sense of purpose. Similarly, Molten Freddy, an amalgamation of the original Funtime animatronics, lurched through the pizzeria with unpredictable hostility. These animatronics, remnants of William Afton's twisted experiments, were no longer bound by their original programming. Instead, they were driven by the lingering remnants of the souls trapped within them, souls that had endured unimaginable suffering. Scraptrap, the burned and broken form of William Afton himself, sought to regain control over Scrap Baby, attempting to assert his dominance as he had done in the past. However, Scrap Baby resisted, her defiance a stark departure from her previous loyalty. This resistance highlighted her newfound independence, a reflection of the fractured relationship between father and daughter. Scrap Baby's actions were not merely rebellion, they were a manifestation of the deep-seated trauma inflicted by William's manipulations. Her twisted loyalty to him had been replaced by a desire to carve her own path, even if it meant perpetuating the cycle of violence. This dynamic between Scraptrap and Scrap Baby underscored the fractured nature of the Afton family, a family torn apart by William's insatiable hunger for power and control. Amidst this turmoil, Henry Emily, the co-founder of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the father of Charlotte Emily, emerged as the orchestrator of the final act. Henry had been quietly observing the chaos, biding his time to execute a plan that would bring an end to the decades-long saga of suffering. His ultimate goal was not merely to destroy the animatronics, but to free the souls trapped within them, including his daughter Charlotte, who had been murdered by William Afton and bound to the puppet animatronic. Henry's plan culminated in what is now known as the completion ending, a meticulously designed sequence of events that would ensure the destruction of the pizzeria and all the animatronics within it. The moment of reckoning arrived when Henry triggered a fire within the pizzeria, a blaze intended to consume everything in its path. This fire was not an act of vengeance, but a calculated measure to liberate the trapped souls. As the flames began to spread, Henry delivered a final monologue over the intercom, revealing his identity and his intentions. His words were both a confession and a farewell, a poignant acknowledgement of the pain and loss that had defined the Fazbear legacy. Henry spoke directly to the animatronics, addressing them not as machines, but as the children whose lives had been stolen from them. He acknowledged their suffering and offered them a chance at peace, a chance to escape the endless cycle of torment. Henry's monologue also served as a direct confrontation with William Afton, condemning him for his crimes and ensuring that he would face justice. Henry's words were laden with a sense of finality, a declaration that the horrors of the past would not be allowed to continue. As the fire intensified, Henry remained inside the pizzeria, sacrificing himself to ensure that the animatronics could not escape. His selfless act was a testament to his determination to end the nightmare once and for all, even if it meant giving his own life. The fire quickly engulfed the building, its flames consuming everything in their path. The animatronics, caught in the inferno, were unable to escape. Scrap Baby, Molten Freddy, and Scrap Trap were destroyed, their physical forms reduced to ash. The souls of the missing children, who had been trapped within the animatronics for so long, were finally freed. Among them was Charlotte Emily, whose spirit had endured unimaginable pain as the puppet. Her liberation marked the end of her long journey, a journey that had begun with her tragic murder and ended with her father's ultimate sacrifice. Michael Afton, William's son and a central figure in the Fazbear saga, was also present in the pizzeria during the fire. Michael had spent years unraveling the mysteries of his father's crimes, driven by a sense of responsibility to undo the damage William had caused. However, as the flames closed in, Michael realized the truth too late. He understood that Henry's plan was the only way to bring an end to the suffering, and he accepted his fate. Michael perished in the fire alongside the others, his death serving as a final act of atonement for the sins of his family. William Afton's physical form, Scrap Trap, was destroyed in the fire, but his malevolent spirit proved to be more resilient than his body. While the flames consumed his physical form, fragments of his consciousness survived, finding refuge in the digital realm. This survival hinted at the possibility of William's return, a chilling reminder that evil often finds a way to endure. The destruction of Scrap Trap marked the end of William Afton's physical presence, but his legacy of terror would continue to haunt the Fazbear universe. As the pizzeria burned to the ground, it seemed that the Fazbear legacy had finally come to an end. The building, once a symbol of joy and entertainment, was reduced to ruins, its secrets buried beneath the ashes. The fire brought closure to the decades-long saga of tragedy and loss, offering a glimmer of hope that the souls of the victims could finally find peace. However, the remnants of William Afton's spirit persisted, a shadowy presence that foreshadowed the potential for future horrors. The events of 2023 marked a turning point in the Fazbear timeline, a moment of reckoning that brought an end to the physical manifestations of the animatronics and the tragedies they represented. Yet, the survival of William Afton's consciousness hinted at the possibility of his return, a threat that would linger in the background of the Fazbear universe. This was further hinted at by the HRY223 audio file found in the later game Five Nights at Freddy's, Help Wanted, which suggested that William's spirit had found a way to persist in the digital realm. This foreshadowing indicated that the story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was far from over, and the horrors of the past might yet resurface in new and unexpected ways. The destruction of the final pizzeria brought closure to many of the storylines that had defined the Fazbear saga, but it also left lingering questions about the future. The liberation of the trapped souls offered a sense of resolution, but the survival of William Afton's spirit served as a reminder that evil is not easily vanquished. The fire of 2023 marked the end of an era, but it also set the stage for the next chapter in the ongoing tale of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a tale that continues to captivate and terrify fans to this day. Following the events of Five Nights at Freddy's Floor 6, Pizzeria Simulator, which culminated in the fiery destruction of the labyrinthine facility and the apparent end of William Afton's reign of terror, the timeline takes a dark and surreal turn. Sometime after 2023, Afton's soul finds itself not in the void of oblivion, but in a personalized hellscape known as the Nightmare Realm. This dimension, a twisted reflection of his own sins and creations, serves as the setting for Ultimate Custom Night, a game that delves into the psychological and supernatural torment of the man who became Springtrap. Here, Afton is not merely dead, but trapped in an eternal cycle of suffering, overseen by the vengeful spirit of Charlotte Emily, better known as the Puppet. The Nightmare Realm is a manifestation of Afton's guilt and the collective wrath of his victims. It is a place where the boundaries between reality and nightmare blur, designed to maximize his suffering. This realm is not a random assortment of horrors, but a meticulously crafted prison reflecting the depths of Afton's depravity. Every animatronic, every location, and every scenario he encounters is a direct consequence of his actions, a reminder of the lives he destroyed. The puppet, driven by a righteous fury, acts as the warden of this hell, ensuring that Afton never finds respite from his torment. At the heart of Afton's punishment is the recreation of his own creations. The animatronics that once served as the mascots of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the tools of his crimes are now twisted into nightmarish versions of themselves. These animatronics are not mere machines, but manifestations of the children Afton murdered, their spirits given form and purpose in this realm. Each animatronic represents a victim, their pain and anger made palpable as they relentlessly pursue their killer. The nightmare animatronics, first introduced in Five Nights at Freddy's Four Weeks, reappear here in their full, horrifying glory, their grotesque designs emphasizing the terror they now inflict upon their creator. The nightmare realm is not static, it shifts and changes based on Afton's memories and fears. The puppet, wielding its supernatural abilities, manipulates the environment to create scenarios that force Afton to relive his worst moments. One of the most harrowing experiences is the recreation of the murders he committed at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. These memories are not passive recollections, but vivid, immersive simulations, forcing Afton to confront the horror of his actions from the perspective of his victims. The children he killed, their faces twisted with pain and betrayal, confront him directly, demanding answers he cannot provide and seeking vengeance he cannot escape. The animatronics in the nightmare realm are far more aggressive and terrifying than their real world counterparts. Their movements are erratic, their designs grotesque, and their intentions unmistakable. They are not bound by the limitations of physical machinery, but are driven by the raw emotions of the souls they represent. Characters like Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, once beloved icons of a family-friendly pizzeria, are now monstrous entities that embody the rage of the children Afton murdered. Even lesser-known animatronics, such as Balloon Boy and the Marionette, take on a sinister edge, their once harmless appearances now dripping with malice. The Nightmare Realm is also populated by animatronics from Afton's other ventures, including Circus Baby and the Fun Times from Sister Location. These animatronics, designed by Afton himself to kidnap and kill children, now turn their deadly capabilities against him. Circus Baby, once a tool of his twisted experiments, becomes a relentless pursuer, her cold, calculating demeanor masking a deep-seated hatred for her creator. The Fun Times, with their deceptive appearances and deadly mechanisms, are no longer under Afton's control, but act as agents of his punishment, their every movement a reminder of his crimes. One of the most chilling aspects of the Nightmare Realm is its ability to trap souls based on their sins. This dimension is not a random afterlife, but a personalized hell, tailored to the individual's actions and guilt. For Afton, this means an eternity spent reliving his crimes and facing the consequences of his actions. The realm feeds on his fear and despair, amplifying his suffering with each passing moment. Every animatronic he encounters, every scenario he endures, is a reflection of his own choices, a reminder that his fate is not arbitrary, but the direct result of his malevolence. Afton's attempts to escape his hell are futile. The puppet, with its supernatural abilities, ensures that he remains trapped, his every effort to flee or resist met with failure. The Nightmare Realm is a prison without walls, a labyrinth without end, designed to keep Afton in a perpetual state of torment. Even if he were to momentarily evade the animatronics or navigate the shifting environment, there is no true escape. The realm is infinite, its horrors unending, and Afton's suffering eternal. The spirits of the children, Afton killed, play a central role in his torment. Their presence is not merely symbolic, but actively participatory, their pain and anger manifesting in the animatronics that pursue him. These spirits are not content with passive vengeance. They confront Afton directly, forcing him to acknowledge the pain he caused. The nightmare realm becomes a stage for their collective wrath, a place where they can finally express the emotions they were denied in life. Their voices, often distorted and haunting, echo through the realm, a constant reminder of the lives Afton destroyed. The puppet's role as the overseer of Afton's punishment is both fitting and tragic. Charlotte Emily, the child whose death set the events of the Five Nights at Freddy's saga in motion, is now the arbiter of justice in this realm. Her spirit, bound to the puppet, has endured years of suffering and loss, witnessing the horrors Afton inflicted upon others. In the nightmare realm, she wields her powers not out of malice, but out of a desire for justice, ensuring that Afton faces the consequences of his actions. Her presence is a constant reminder of the innocence he destroyed and the lives he shattered. The nightmare realm is not just a punishment for Afton, but a reflection of the broader themes of the Five Nights at Freddy's series. It underscores the idea that actions have consequences, that evil cannot escape judgment, and that the victims of violence deserve to have their voices heard. The realm is a manifestation of the series' moral core, a place where the sins of the past are confronted and the cycle of violence is brought to a brutal yet fitting conclusion. As the timeline progresses, the Nightmare Realm becomes a pivotal chapter in the Five Nights at Freddy's saga. It is not merely a continuation of the story, but a culmination of the themes and ideas that have defined the series since its inception. Afton's punishment is not just a personal hell, but a narrative reckoning, a moment where the consequences of his actions are laid bare and the voices of his victims are given their due. The Nightmare Realm is a testament to the enduring power of justice, even in the face of unimaginable evil. In Ultimate Custom Night, the Nightmare Realm serves as both a narrative device and a thematic anchor. It is a place where the horrors of the past are confronted, where the victims of violence are given agency, and where the cycle of suffering is brought to a brutal yet fitting conclusion. Afton's torment is not merely a punishment, but a reflection of the broader themes of the Five Nights at Freddy's series, a reminder that evil cannot escape judgment, and that justice, however delayed, will prevail. The Nightmare Realm is also a testament to the enduring legacy of the Five Nights at Freddy's series. It is a place where the horrors of the past are confronted, where the victims of violence are given agency, and where the cycle of suffering is brought to a brutal yet fitting conclusion. Afton's torment is not merely a punishment, but a reflection of the broader themes of the series, a reminder that evil cannot escape judgment and that justice, however delayed, will prevail. As we delve deeper into the Nightmare Realm, the complexities of Afton's punishment become increasingly apparent. Every animatronic, every scenario, and every moment of terror is a reflection of his crimes, a reminder of the lives he destroyed and the pain he caused. The Nightmare Realm is not just a hellscape, but a narrative device, a place where the themes of the Five Nights at Freddy's series are brought to their logical conclusion. It is a testament to the enduring power of justice, even in the face of unimaginable evil. In the next part of this exploration, we will delve further into the mechanics of the Nightmare Realm, examining the specific animatronics and scenarios that define Afton's torment. We will also explore the broader implications of this realm within the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, considering its role in the overarching narrative and its significance as a thematic anchor. The Nightmare Realm is not just a punishment for Afton, but a reflection of the series' moral core, a place where the sins of the past are confronted and the cycle of violence is brought to a brutal yet fitting conclusion. The Nightmare Realm, as it unfolds in Ultimate Custom Night, is a meticulously crafted hell tailored to William Afton's deepest fears and regrets, ensuring his suffering is both endless and profoundly personal. This realm is not merely a generic punishment, but a reflection of his own actions, a twisted mirror of the pain he inflicted on others. Here, the consequences of his experiments with Remnant, a supernatural substance derived from the essence of souls, are brought to the forefront. Remnant, which Afton sought to harness for immortality, becomes the very tool of his torment. His attempts to manipulate life and death have backfired spectacularly, trapping him in a cycle of agony where the souls he wronged now hold dominion over his fate. The Nightmare Realm is a place where the sins of the past are laid bare, and Afton's crimes are revisited upon him with unrelenting precision. Central to this torment is the presence of the puppet, also known as Charlotte Emily, the first victim of Afton's murderous spree. Her role in the Nightmare Realm is one of justice and retribution. As the orchestrator of Afton's punishment, she ensures that his suffering is eternal, a fitting end for the man who took so many innocent lives. The puppet's presence is a direct consequence of Afton's actions outside Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where he killed Charlotte in cold blood. Her death set the events of the entire franchise into motion, and now, in this realm, she becomes the arbiter of his fate. Her vigilance is unyielding, ensuring that Afton's torment never ceases. This is not merely revenge, but a form of cosmic justice, where the souls of his victims, bound together by their shared suffering, ensure that he pays for his crimes. Afton's punishment is uniquely torturous because it is personalized to reflect his own fears and regrets. The Nightmare Realm draws from his past, recreating elements of his life that haunt him most. The FNAF 4 bedroom, a recurring motif in the series, appears here as a twisted version of the room where Afton's son, the crying child, experienced his own nightmares. This space, once a symbol of familial neglect and tragedy, now serves as a reminder of Afton's failures as a father and his role in the suffering of his own children. Similarly, the sister location facility, where Afton conducted some of his most horrific experiments, is recreated in this realm. The animatronics he once controlled now turn against him, their mechanical voices echoing with accusations and condemnation. These references to his past are not random, but deliberate, designed to force Afton to confront the consequences of his actions in every waking moment. The Nightmare Realm is also a place where souls are judged and punished based on their actions in life. It is a purgatory of sorts, where the wicked are held accountable for their deeds. Afton's misuse of Remnant and his disregard for life have condemned him to this fate. Remnant, which he sought to exploit for his own gain, now binds him to this realm, ensuring he cannot escape. His torment is a direct consequence of his actions, a karmic retribution that ensures he pays for his crimes. The souls of his victims, bound together by their shared suffering, have created a prison tailored specifically to him. This is not a place of redemption or release, but of eternal punishment, where Afton's suffering serves as a reminder of the lives he destroyed. The puppet's role as overseer of Afton's punishment is a form of justice for the victims of his crimes. Her presence in the Nightmare Realm is a testament to the enduring impact of Afton's actions. As the first victim, Charlotte Emily's death set the stage for the tragedies that followed. Her spirit, embodied in the puppet, has been a constant presence throughout the series, guiding and protecting the other souls trapped by Afton's machinations. Now, in the Nightmare Realm, she takes on a new role, ensuring that Afton's punishment is as relentless as his crimes were heinous. Her eternal vigilance ensures that he never finds peace, a fitting fate for the man who caused so much suffering. Afton's torment in the nightmare realm is a direct consequence of his misuse of Remnant and his disregard for life. Remnant, which he sought to harness for immortality, has instead become the instrument of his eternal suffering. His experiments with this supernatural substance, which involved trapping the souls of children in animatronics, have backfired spectacularly. The souls he sought to control now control him, ensuring that his punishment is both endless and profoundly personal. The Nightmare Realm is a place where the sins of the past are laid bare, and Afton's crimes are revisited upon him with unrelenting precision. His torment is not merely physical, but psychological, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions in every waking moment. The Nightmare Realm serves as a potential conclusion to Afton's story, ensuring that he pays for his crimes. This realm is not merely a prison, but a place of judgment, where the wicked are held accountable for their deeds. Afton's suffering is a reminder of the lives he destroyed, a karmic retribution that ensures he cannot escape the consequences of his actions. The souls of his victims, bound together by their shared suffering, have created a prison tailored specifically to him. This is not a place of redemption or release, but of eternal punishment, where Afton's suffering serves as a reminder of the lives he destroyed. Afton's hell includes references to his past, such as the FNAF 4 bedroom and the sister location facility, ensuring that his torment is uniquely personal. The FNAF 4 bedroom, a recurring motif in the series, appears here as a twisted version of the room where Afton's son, the crying child, experienced his own nightmares. This space, once a symbol of familial neglect and tragedy, now serves as a reminder of Afton's failures as a father and his role in the suffering of his own children. Similarly, the sister location facility, where Afton conducted some of his most horrific experiments, is recreated in this realm. The animatronics he once controlled now turn against him, their mechanical voices echoing with accusations and condemnation. These references to his past are not random, but deliberate, designed to force Afton to confront the consequences of his actions in every waking moment. The puppet's eternal vigilance ensures that Afton's punishment never ends, serving as a fitting fate for his crimes. Her presence in the nightmare realm is a testament to the enduring impact of Afton's actions. As the first victim, Charlotte Emily's death set the stage for the tragedies that followed. Her spirit, embodied in the puppet, has been a constant presence throughout the series, guiding and protecting the other souls trapped by Afton's machinations. Now, in the nightmare realm, she takes on a new role, ensuring that Afton's punishment is as relentless as his crimes were heinous. Her eternal vigilance ensures that he never finds peace, a fitting fate for the man who caused so much suffering. In the nightmare realm, Afton's torment is a direct consequence of his misuse of Remnant and his disregard for life. Remnant, which he sought to harness for immortality, has instead become the instrument of his eternal suffering. His experiments with this supernatural substance, which involved trapping the souls of children in animatronics, have backfired spectacularly. The souls he sought to control now control him, ensuring that his punishment is both endless and profoundly personal. The nightmare realm is a place where the sins of the past are laid bare, and Afton's crimes are revisited upon him with unrelenting precision. His torment is not merely physical, but psychological, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions in every waking moment. The nightmare realm serves as a potential conclusion to Afton's story, ensuring that he pays for his crimes. This realm is not merely a prison, but a place of judgment, where the wicked are held accountable for their deeds. Afton's suffering is a reminder of the lives he destroyed, a karmic retribution that ensures he cannot escape the consequences of his actions. The souls of his victims, bound together by their shared suffering, have created a prison tailored specifically to him. This is not a place of redemption or release, but of eternal punishment, where Afton's suffering serves as a reminder of the lives he destroyed. Afton's hell includes references to his past, such as the FNAF 4 bedroom and the sister location facility, ensuring that his torment is uniquely personal. The FNAF 4 bedroom, a recurring motif in the series, appears here as a twisted version of the room where Afton's son, the crying child, experienced his own nightmares. This space, once a symbol of familial neglect and tragedy, now serves as a reminder of Afton's failures as a father and his role in the suffering of his own children. Similarly, the sister location facility, where Afton conducted some of his most horrific experiments, is recreated in this realm. The animatronics he once controlled now turn against him, their mechanical voices echoing with accusations and condemnation. These references to his past are not random, but deliberate, designed to force Afton to confront the consequences of his actions in every waking moment. The puppet's eternal vigilance ensures that Afton's punishment never ends, serving as a fitting fate for his crimes. Her presence in the nightmare realm is a testament to the enduring impact of Afton's actions. As the first victim, Charlotte Emily's death set the stage for the tragedies that followed. Her spirit, embodied in the puppet, has been a constant presence throughout the series, guiding and protecting the other souls trapped by Afton's machinations. Now, in the nightmare realm, she takes on a new role, ensuring that Afton's punishment is as relentless as his crimes were heinous. Her eternal vigilance ensures that he never finds peace, a fitting fate for the man who caused so much suffering. In the nightmare realm, Afton's torment is a direct consequence of his misuse of Remnant and his disregard for life. Remnant, which he sought to harness for immortality, has instead become the instrument of his eternal suffering. His experiments with this supernatural substance, which involved trapping the souls of children in animatronics, have backfired spectacularly. The souls he sought to control now control him, ensuring that his punishment is both endless and profoundly personal. The nightmare realm is a place where the sins of the past are laid bare, and Afton's crimes are revisited upon him with unrelenting precision. His torment is not merely physical, but psychological, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions in every waking moment. The nightmare realm serves as a potential conclusion to Afton's story, ensuring that he pays for his crimes. This realm is not merely a prison, but a place of judgment, where the wicked are held accountable for their deeds. Afton's suffering is a reminder of the lives he destroyed, a karmic retribution that ensures he cannot escape the consequences of his actions. The souls of his victims, bound together by their shared suffering, have created a prison tailored specifically to him. This is not a place of redemption or release, but of eternal punishment, where Afton's suffering serves as a reminder of the lives he destroyed.